Hello, everyone, and hello, weird curl that is sticking out. Look at this one. Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of forgot that I need to eat something. So last minute, I was like, oh, let me make a bagel real quick. And then, I don't know, just, it took longer than I thought. Had to toast it right, put on some butter, some jelly, but we're all good. We're all caught up now. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Unfortunately, today is not going to be the stream I think most people assume it is. Today is not jumping right into Talishar games. Unfortunately, Levia is not working on Talishar. Now, I mean, no hard feelings against the Talishar devs. Those guys work so freaking hard. We even hosted a stream recently, kind of showing the behind the scenes. So now I can appreciate why something like Levia Redeemed takes a while to implement correctly. Because to just toss it in and make sure it's triggering, that's cool. But all the other interactions involved in it, I can't even imagine the amount of effort that's going to take to code. Because, both of those cards do quite different things and interact in ways that have never been, coded in a Levia deck before, I think. I don't know. I can't imagine how hard it's going to be, but shout out to the Talishar devs. They're working hard. And, they do have a Patreon if you want to support them in any capacity, which I am signed up for their Patreon. I think those guys hella deserve it because, they put the client out there for free, after all, for free. So if you can spare money, of course, it's always good to show some love in that respect. I'm eagerly waiting. I'm hoping Levia is ready by tomorrow. Hoping. So today is just going to be more so brewing with decks. We could, play a bit of it, but every game I've played with Levia so far, the games just don't feel new enough, because without the flip, without you actually making that choice game per game, she's just not the deck she's supposed to be yet. So it's not that interesting to play her on Talishar right now because you don't get to flip. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We're just patiently waiting. So deck building, though, huge part of how you get ready to start grinding some Levia games. Let me tell you, I've got 6 different brews that we're going to be going over today that are all the first steps, at least, in better builds than have ever existed before. Strict upgrades from what all these different versions of Levia played as pre-Dusk Till Dawn. So hopefully still some decent content today. I also wanted to announce some big giveaways here because it was brought to my attention. Check out how cool this is. Actually, hold on. Before we do that, let me say hi to everyone in the chat. Gaddy's saying, why? Why what? Why what? I'll answer anything. Anything. Any why that you ask, I shall answer. So be careful. Like a genie over here. Anyone that would want to do testing on tabletop? I personally have issues with TTS. My computer crashes for no good reason with it. If any of you were around for the, Malaysia best of 3 I played, where I played against the top 3 players from Malaysia in a best of 3, Levia versus their decks. And I won, by the way, I won. But we tried to do it on TTS, and we got delayed by 2 hours because my freaking TTS just will not work. It was crashing, I was trying to fix it, it was loading in, it was crashing, I couldn't stream, then everything would crash again. It was it's just miserable, and I don't really use TTS for enough to ever have gone and fixed it, so my TTS remains very finicky. And I've done the simple things like uninstall, reinstall. On top of that, I'm not a huge fan of Tabletop Simulator. I don't know. I don't want to get lost in all the kind of manual steps you have to do to play the game, because in person it doesn't feel like you have to spend that much brain power on those parts of the game. Drawing up your hand, dragging this card out, putting a die on it, getting a token on board. All that in-game feels much more natural, right? Because it takes no real effort. You're sitting there, you're ready to play. But on TTS, there's that little extra step of effort that just makes the games not that enjoyable for me. It is what it is. I'm not a TTS person. Love Talishar though. Love Talishar. Tabletop Simulator is Talishar. Yes. Do we need to record the Levia coding? I actually offered. I was like, yo, Nate, if you want to code Levia live, I can stream it. We can get 100 people, trying to help you out here. But unfortunately, he's working today. So I did offer, though. I did offer that we could kickstart the stream with some live coding of Levia on Talishar. What's up, Tyler? What's up, Tyler? And then we've got Fresh and Buds back again. Morgan, you're missing your line, rotate your laundry. You always say that. Gaddy is just saying, why Levia? I mean, that should be an obvious answer, because there's a lot to explore with Levia. Dusk Till Dawn gave us an entire double-faced hero card, demi-hero card rather, that not only accentuates the old ways of playing Levia, but also can lead into some new strategies. So there's tons to explore. And her card pool, we didn't see a huge injection of like powerful commons and rares, but her Majestic's pretty good. A lot to explore. Then thinking about Deadwood Rumbler a lot. Interesting to be able to pick up Blood Deck cards. Yeah, actually, you'll see in a second. Deadwood Rumbler is making its way back into a lot of lists that I'm practicing. Okay, with chat caught up, let me show you all something pretty cool. Pretty cool today. So, it was brought to my attention that in the League of Levia, we have reached over 1,000 members. Over 1,000 members, which I was like noting how fast we were growing, just, on the sidelines. They're like, okay, we're like up to 900. That's cool. Didn't really expect it to go past 1,000 this quickly, because it literally, like, I think yesterday when I checked, we were still like low 900s or something. But all of a sudden, I mean, Levia hype is real, and I don't know where people find the link. Probably just the YouTube video or like my Twitter or my Discord, which is cool. It takes a little effort to go and click and join. And yet here we are, over 1,000 League of Levia members. And that is juicy enough to want to do some really cool giveaways for the Levia community. And I'm thinking I'll make like some proper announcement on like the YouTube post, on Discord as well, on Twitter. But I think what we're going to do, just to celebrate not only the 1,000 members here, but there's a couple other milestones that are pretty big. Like, I crossed over 2,000 members on Twitter, or followers on Twitter, about to hit 5,000 on YouTube, which is pretty crazy. So I think the biggest giveaway I can really offer right now, because I'm a brokey, tell you what, but I have these really cool, check these out. I have these really cool blank cards. Aren't blank cards so cool? They're even cooler when on the flip side they're signed by Wisnutan, and they're all Levia cards of some sort. That's even cooler than them being blank. Alright, so I'm thinking it would be a cool giveaway to kind of spread these across the different communities that I've got going for me here. We've got, I don't know the order in which these will go out, but, we can pretend here, like Discord, the OGs. Like, YouTube, the biggest base, Twitter, and then like the Patreon for like some extra incentive, something like that would be kind of cool to do giveaways spread around on everything. But I haven't made like a formal announcement for that yet. So I'll probably get to that probably after the stream today, but I've got all these cards. I think they're pretty darn cool, and they'd be really cool in some of your hands. So we'll just do it. These 5 in some capacity will be given out, just so you can see them individually. We've got Adult Levia. Come on, camera. Adult Levia, signed by Wisnutan. Artist proof. Young Levia. Come on, camera. Signed by Wisnutan. Artist proof. OG Blasmafet, signed by Wisnutan. Artist proof. The, placeholder Levia token thing that came in the Blitz starter thing, signed by Wisnutan, artist proof. And then this one's probably the coolest one, so I'll have to decide where this one goes, because this is badass. But this is it's the only way to get a non-foil shadow border Blasmafet like this. It normally only comes in rainbow foil or cold foil. This is the only way to get a non-foil one. Come on, camera. Signed by Wisnutan, artist proof. So that's probably like the biggest one. I mean, they're all pretty cool. I got these signed in person at Worlds. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll do some giveaways across all the platforms. But that's really kicked off by the League of Levia. So shout out to the League of Levia, because I've always looked at the League of Levia as it's not really like, it's not my community, it's Levia's community. I was just the one who opened it up, opened the doors for everybody. But, like my branding is not the League of Levia branding. Mansan is not League of Levia. The League of Levia is it's made up by the people who are in it. You know, the tier system exists in League of Levia to just build incentives for people to want to do well with this previously unloved hero. Now she's getting tons of love. So I've always loved checking in on the League of Levia and how they're doing, but I don't see it as like, it's not my personal Discord, it's yours. So the fact that it's over 1,000 now is amazing. There's 1,000 of you. 1,000 of you love Levia. 1,000 of you don't love me necessarily, but you love Levia, and that's big. That's big. So thank you for that, everybody. We're gonna crack this hero. We're gonna have fun with her. And oh, okay. Oops. I of course tab into a Discord conversation, and someone says that's a bad gift to the community. I hope they're not talking about me. Oh my god, I'm not gonna scroll up and worry about that right now. Oh yeah. Okay. Here. Let me restart one thing on the stream deck because it's not working, and it never freaking works. But we'll pull this back up so I can hit my buttons. You can play on Talishar the new cards in a private room only if they're coded. So, like for example, the new Levia Demi hero, you can put her in your deck and it loads the image, but it doesn't actually work in Talishar. I've tested it all last night. I was trying to figure out, like, you know, is there any way I can, like, maybe it works, but it's just like bugged a little bit. So I tried a whole bunch of things, you know, taking blood debt from like exactly 40, taking blood debt at like 20, taking blood debt at like 14, trying to click every button in the world to see if I could, you know, flip to redeem somehow. It's just not actually coded. And then sure enough, when Nate Uthamunk, who is the main dev behind Talishar right now, when I just messaged him straight up and said, you know, hey, is there any like progress on the Levia? He just said not yet. So that's where we're at. Levia doesn't work yet, but it's better than when I tried playing her a couple days ago, and Hellhammer you could put in your deck, but you couldn't even attack with it. That one was rough. It sat there and it just mocked you. It was this badass weapon and you just couldn't swing it. There's a couple other things that don't work yet. The shadow equipments, the new commons, they don't work yet. So playing Levia right now is just probably not worth it. So instead we're going to devote today to deck building and doing some groupthink and answering a lot of questions, because with the growth of League of Levia, there's a lot of people resurfacing some old questions about deck building with Levia. Old questions, which there's like 2 years of content. I know it's a lot to comb through, people. A lot of it's bad too. Early days were rough of Levia content on my YouTube channel that somehow, if you can just like take a day off of work, watch every video, then you'll catch up. That's a lot to expect, so we're going to try to instead do the Spark Notes version today and get everyone caught up on like where Levia is at and what you need to consider with deck building, and why some cards don't get played when they otherwise seem obvious, like Nourishing Emptiness, for example. All right, let me test if the buttons work now. They do. All right, they do. Is Levia tier 1? I don't think so at all. I think she's a lot better than she used to be, but going from like F to C in an average player's hands is still pretty darn good, because I think in a good player's hands, she's likely... Oh god, like, no, you can't even say. Because the deal is, like, Levia can never be the meta warper herself, because she doesn't demand anything out of the opponent. She doesn't have on-hits. So if you're a deck that can just, like, have its game plan, execute its game plan well, then Levia is just a deck that doesn't interact with you, you know? So, like a Phi deck, for example, that is facing a matchup that is basically just a clock, you know? If a Phi plays against Levia, the only thing they need to worry about is going to 0. That's the only thing they need to worry about. And then otherwise, the Phi has complete agency over every other choice they make. Every other, like, way to max value push a hand, yada yada. So, because of that, it's very hard for Levia to be tier 1, unless her numbers are just nuts. And they didn't really give her better numbers this set. They just straight didn't. We went over this in the last stream, where the new commons even are not pushed in that Levia rate, where they're like 1 or 2 value over Rhinar cards. They're actually the exact same as Rhinar cards. So they just straight didn't give her better numbers this set. They gave her more toolboxy stuff. They gave her, of course, the new Demi hero. All that's really cool. But her numbers are not really going to be any better than they used to. Maybe a little bit more consistent, right? So for Levia to still be a deck that like races it all, it's still pretty tied to Bloodrush, right? For Levia to be a deck that grinds late game, she's still just going to need an overall slow meta, because she's not the deck that can like force your opponent to play slower. She doesn't have Frostbite. She doesn't have good disruption. So she'll just fall where she falls. I think what that means overall is we'll just have to see how the Illusionists warp the meta more than anything. Because Lexi's still very good. Losing Bracers, decent hit. I mean, I'm actually all in for that. That was an extra husk's worth of damage and outplay potential that they just don't have in the deck anymore. So that makes the Levia matchup obviously better. Like, obviously, that is just a better matchup now. Probably not good still. Probably not good. We'll have to test it. But it's better than it used to be. Win there, right? Win there. But the aggro decks all fall in that spot, like I mentioned with Levia, where Levia is not interacting with them. So if the aggro decks are just built to be turbo consistent, then they will dump damage and probably just outrace you, unless you get some really good hands, some really key blocks, and maybe your opponent stumbles now and again. Because Levia is just gated by Bloodrush in an aggro mirror. She just is. It's kind of boring, but that's the way Brood is right now. So I think for me, Levia will potentially be meta relevant if the Illusionist can do some warping of the metagame. Without an old him, if the Illusionist can be this like weird, wacky threat that like somehow beats Rangers really well and demands... Actually, I'm not sure if Illusionist would really help the problem I'm talking about here, because Illusionist tends to fall pretty hard to Ninja, and Ninja's not that great for Levia either. So, you know what? We'll just leave it as a big question mark. But Levia tends to be pretty good into Illusionist, is my point. Anyway. Let's jump into the rest of what we're doing for the stream here. Azalea got hit in the crossfire. That's also fine. That is also very fine for Levia. That matchup was pretty hard. You could tech for it decently. You could actually play into Red and Ledger pretty well. But it used to be just the fact that if it was dominates every turn, you just didn't fill the graveyard the way you wanted to. Could be pretty bad. You lost a lot of tempo there. You also could get hit by Sleep Dart and just lose the game, which won't happen anymore, which is cool. So I'm eager to see how that matchup shakes out. It was always like kind of even, honestly, kind of even. Hatsu may rise up. Yeah, that one's going to be annoying. It is to note, though, that to face aggro, Levia did get some decent new tools. We, of course, already had Scab Skins, right? Scab Skins was good block. If you wanted to play the most defensive equipment suite as possible into aggro previously, then you would run Skull Crushers as your arm piece instead of Gambler's Gloves, because you're not built to roll Scabs. And we did get a new equipment slot that helps a lot there. We got Grasp, right? Or Shadow, Darkness, Grasp, Shadow Grasp. We can look it up. Let's look it up. There we go. This one. Let's look it up. I forget the name of it, like Grasp of Darkness or something. But it is worth noting that Levia always could make aggro games pretty close. They always got very, very close and would come down to like a Writhing win or like a Reckless Swing win, right? And we did just straight get one extra block when we're playing to beat aggro, which I think is a pretty big deal. Like this straight just blocks 2. Really good. Really good. On top of the new headpiece, which may actually work pretty well against Ninja. I mean, we'll see on that one. Yeah, like there are more defensive tools that Levia got to maybe make aggro a little bit closer. And then there's the potential of, if you can like make a game really grindy, then, I mean, this card's just going to be crazy good, crazy good. If you can get the flip off and you only took 1 blood debt for it, that's also probably pretty big. So it's not to say that like Levia is doomed against an aggro meta, but that's definitely where she's weakest. That is definitely not where she wants to be. So that's my one reservation in calling like Levia any kind of tier hero right now, all right? Last thing to go over in case anyone hadn't seen it. Let me pull this up for everybody because people were talking about it on the last stream. And I think it's like officially revealed now. So let me swap back to this. We do know the last cards in the set now. They weren't in that card review. So let me just do those real quick. Because they weren't ready when we did this yesterday. All right. First things first. Light of Soul. This is the Fabled of the set. It's not a Shadow Fabled. And that is very disappointing to me. I was hoping against hope that we'd see like the Demonastry or like the Terror of Arathriel or something, like some landmark counter to Library of Solana. Whether it was good or not, who cares? I wanted it more so for flavor and for like the off chance you could build a deck around it. But let's face it, if they gave us some kind of shadow landmark, it probably would have been more for the Rune Blades, just like how Library is more for Prism than it is Boltyn. So that's a little annoying, we're not gonna lie. On the flip side though, no one seems overly excited about this card, and for me that's cool. If it was a Fabled that gave even any like slight percentage point to the damn light heroes, screw that. And they don't seem very excited about this at all. So cool. We can just kind of shrug off the Fabled. It doesn't really matter to us. This is the one card that I was mentioning on stream, but there wasn't an image for it. I think this one's interesting if it's that hard to beat Prism, but you know, we could beat Prism pretty reliably with just all our Go Again and then some Scabs hits. So I don't know if this one really matters, but it does have a pretty easy cost curve next to Writhing Beast Hulk. You know, you can 3-card hand 8 Dominate, which is pretty decent. So like, if we actually need targeted Aura Destruction, we can put a card in the deck that's not just Scabskin's Gamblers. And that's pretty cool. Because it used to be like the only interaction point we had with Illusionist, like with Prism rather, was Scabskins, and now that's not necessarily true. You could run this, which is cool. Mischievous Meeps, this one doesn't matter for us. And then this is a big deal for all the Levia players. Crown of Providence got reprinted as the last legendary non-foil, hoping it's cheap. But I'm also not entirely sure that Levia players who didn't have this need to go out of their way to buy it at all now. The new Brute legendary headpiece could just be what we're running. I do think you probably end up running both. You know, the Intim headpiece won't be good in every matchup, that whereas Crown of Providence, hand fixing for a Bloodrush turn, helping you cycle Arsenal, play around CNC, that's always been really strong. So this is pretty cool. I actually really enjoy, we're giving this S. This is perfect reprint. Thank you, LSS. We like this a lot. It helps out all the Levia players who already have to spend quite a bit of money on, I guess, like Husk, Art of Wars. Levia can end up being pretty expensive at the end of the day. And then these are kind of funny. Nothing relevant to Levia, so who cares? Anyway, that's going to wrap all the card ratings then. We've looked over anything that could be relevant for Levia. So there you go. Take that for what you will. And then let's go over some decks. And this is what everyone's here for. Actually, no, sorry. One more thing. Battle-hardened Cincinnati. If you want to go ahead and make sure you get the notification for the stream, I haven't started to put out any promos for it yet. We will. This week is going to start having like a lot of promos going out for Battle-hardened Cincinnati. But Battle-hardened Cincinnati is next, not this weekend, but next weekend, so soon. And it is being brought to you, once again, by my production company. The production half, coverage, broadcasting half of what I do is now its own thing, to reiterate, Savage Feats. Savage Feats is headed by myself on production and Nathan Dolman from Savage Land News on the behind-the-scenes, the business end. So the two of us, we're bringing Battle-hardened Cincinnati to you all, and we hired some amazing casting talent. Brody Spurlock and Sam O'Byrne. I think that is going to be a just bomb of an event. It's going to be so cool. Release weekend for Dusk Till Dawn. We'll see Bracers ban in effect, Old Him being out of format, new Prism, new Levia, new Boltyn, new Vincent. I mean, there's a lot going on. So there we go. This is now finally scheduled. Promos and stuff are going to be going out for it pretty soon, so just keep your eyes peeled. There's going to be a lot of giveaways on that stream as well. We have over $300 of Dragon Shield stuff to give away. So there you go. That's the little plug for Battle-hardened Cincinnati. Coming up very, very soon. Other than that, I'll be at Battle-hardened Chicago. We locked it. We did it. Got my ticket. Got the plane stuff, the hotel stuff booked. Definitely hurt to splurge on an event right now because I'm unemployed. But we're doing it. I really want to play Levia. I want to see what she does. And at this point in the metagame, we'll have like one event to look at, which helps a lot for how you want to build Levia. Because like I said, Levia won't define the meta. She does have to kind of find her role in it. And once we see Cincy, that will inform at least a little bit of Chicago, because Battlehard in Chicago is the exact weekend after. So there you go. That's all the big announcements. We can now look into... So Battlehard in Cincy is winnable because there's no Brody. That's exactly it. See, that's really what I've done for you all. By hiring Brody as casting talent, now anyone can win. Without Brody gatekeeping the entirety of the Flesh and Blood community, even little old Michael Hamilton can go and win one of these now. He won't get knocked out like he did at the old Chicago one. Just saying. There you go. So that'll be tons of fun. But that's not the point of today's stream. You know, we got to warm ourselves up. Do all the talking. Get it out of the way. What's up? Sam's even in the chat right now. What's up, Sam? Let's go. So we've got a bunch of brews that I've been working on with Levia. You can see them all right here. There are 6 different builds I think I really want to dig into. And I'm not going to make any calls so far about what's the most viable or whatever, because these lists are like super experimental. We can't even play them yet on Talishar. Definitely can't play them in paper unless you're printing proxies. But who's got the money for printer ink? Let me tell you. Jesus. So I've got 6 different builds right now. Is this the first one that I want to go over? And through this, we can kind of talk about like Levia as she stands going into like a new competitive season where she actually has some legs, because there have been scant Levia finishes across her 2 years of existence. I mean, truly, if you look at how the League of Levia works, so in the League of Levia, one of the reasons to set it up this way is just to actually like globally track how many people have Levia finishes, all right? So in the League of Levia, oh my god, look at that. We grew like by 20 people or something already. So anyone who joins the League of Levia, as long as you accept the role, becomes a disciple of Demonastery, right? That's your starting rank. You're just interested. You know, you step your toe in the little shadow puddle, you're getting consumed, but you haven't had any finishes yet. Once you either win an armory or top a skirmish, I think are the requirements. I don't quite remember. You become Levia's Legionnaire. This is just a way for everyone to track Levia finishes across the globe. Let me tell you, you go from like a list of like 1,000 members, right? The Levia's Legionnaire, this is people who have only won an armory. I don't know how we get like a hard count on it, but it's not that many people. I don't know. What's a rough guess? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 26, 33. Okay, so I don't know. There's like 40 people. I'm not sure everyone reports it correctly, to be fair, because, you know, it's just like one channel in the chat. But this is at least 40 people who all they've done with Levia is won an armory with her so far. It's got to be higher than 40. This one feels a little underreported, not going to lie. But then you go up to Blasmfet's right hand. This means you've either won a skirmish or top 8'd a RTN or ProQuest is how you get this rank. Won a skirmish or top 8'd one of those. This rank, also very light. Very light. I mean, what is this, like 20 people? It's, oh my god, so few people. The other perk of this level, by the way, is if you reach this rank, I've done a couple videos in the past where I've like collaborated with other Levia members, and this is like the minimum tier to get an invite for a video, just by the way. Because I know there's a lot of Levia fans out there, but you know, whenever I'm trying to make like a discussion video or something with Levia, at least these people have like a tournament result, something to speak for. So that's an additional perk of this tier, just by the way. But there's not that many of them, right? This is only top 8 RTN, top 8 ProQuest, or win a skirmish. And there's barely any. Now, this is when it gets really scary. Shadow Incarnate. This is if you top cut like a Battle Hardened, a Nationals, like God forbid a Calling, which has never happened, or won a ProQuest or Road to Nats. You get Shadow Incarnate. I'm pretty sure we're missing like 1 or 2 people on this, but there are only 5 in this tier. 5. Insane. How much this scales, right? It just drops off the face of the earth. And then Harbinger of Doomsday, this is special because these are like the founding members. In the early days, it was just a tiny little group chat with Kendra, myself, Nervash, and Zordon. All of us have Levia finishes in our own right that are like a mix of everything. But there you go. That's the tier of where we're at in terms of Levia finishes. And this is like not exactly right. There's definitely some holes in how people have reported, but not massive holes. Not massive holes by any right, which is crazy, So we're going into a competitive season where Levia, for once in her life, may actually start to buff out the ranks of her Legion here, which I'm very excited for. But this gives us at least a small sample size of lists we can look back on that actually have tournament results, because there really just aren't that many. So that's at least interesting. You can literally, like, probably on your two hands count the amount of like tournament finishes there are with Levia, and then just go look at those lists, and then that's a good starting point for a lot of decks. Let me catch up on chat real quick. You won an armory and you're not a legionary? All right, I got you live. Sam. Where are you at? PK Sam V. Is that not your name? I got you live. As long as you're online, you'll at least show up here. PK Sam V. I think I'm missing you. You posted somewhere before. Recently. Okay, here we go. Oh, look, thank you, League. You got it. Levi's Legionnaire. Boom. Got you, Sam. Also, Sigma, how are you only a disciple? That's sad. Sigma, you've never won a Legion. Oh, come on. Oh, okay, here we go. Now everyone's reporting. This is good. We're buffing out the ranks. Well done, everyone. Sigma, this is criminal. How are you only a disciple? I never noticed this. Okay, anyway. So, the decks that I'm brewing so far with Levia are across the board some of the archetypes that she's at least previously had, with like kind of one new one. So not saying that this is everything that she could really look to build or play as in the like new demi-hero archetypes that might exist or whatever. But let's go with... Let me just walk through some pretty baseline ones first, right? So here, Bloodrush Aggro. People will probably remember a list like this pretty well, because a list like this is very similar to the concept that Vasily took to top 4 at Greek Nationals, which is just, you are a aggro deck, first and foremost. You say pretty much no blocks in every hand, and you try to make every hand deal at least 12 damage. Even if it's not a great rate, even if it's 4 cards for 12, if you can guaranteed build your deck in a way that presents at least 12 per hand, then that does put a pretty significant clock on your opponent. Because even like a Phi deck, right? If a Phi draws their bad hand, if it's a lot of like clunky blues, then their hand is, block, swing, Emberblade, Arsenal. Like that's their hand. Not even every Phi hand can be minimum 12 damage, which is crazy to think about, but that is a fact. So this Levia deck aims to do basically baseline 12 damage a hand. Just be aggressive, try not to block, and just put your opponent on a clock that's saying, if you are not blocking, if you're not respecting my damage, then at minimum, my 12 damage turn cycles will end the game in like 4 turns. That's a lot. That's really quick, If your opponent is just saying no blocks, then you're saying, even on my bad hands, I should present enough to end the game in 4 turns. Very relevant. And that's not counting the spiky turns of Art of Wars and Bloodrush and that style of thing. So this kind of deck runs very aggressive. It really tries to not block, so it runs a lot of the non-block cards. Basically, you still have a Claws Core because you are a Bloodrush deck. You still are trying to abuse the fact that you don't want to block either, so you are going to use Carrion Husk over Tunic. I'm experimenting with Grasp and Hooves over Scab's Gamblers, because in the ways that I previously played this kind of version, the only time you really use Scabskin's Gamblers was like on an Art of War turn already, where you could try to hit and make Art of War at least give +2. Otherwise, your hands naturally had a lot of go again. And if the game is so short, then the one-time use of a Hooves is probably all you need, and you're not losing any of the block compared to what Scabskin's Gamblers used to do, because Grasp and Hooves blocks 3 in total, which is the same as what Scabs did. So I think the equipment suite actually got a lot better for this kind of deck. Obviously, Scowling Fleshbag, another big deal. In a way, links would be awesome. Yeah, I'll drop links. I think these are mostly in the, I think these are also mostly in the Legal Levia Discord as well. But then you also look at Scowling Fleshbag, and this kind of card in a full aggro Levia deck becomes nuts, because it really is another Husk. You're not trying to play a very long game, so the first moment you see value to get Scowling Fleshbag to do two things. Number one, block 2. It's always going to block 2, right? But number 2, if you are intimming a final card out of your opponent's hand that they intended to use, most likely that card was getting 4 value playing aggressively, right? 4 value playing aggressively, because that tends to be what a card is doing on offense versus defense. Defense, baseline 3. Offense, in theory, baseline around 4, right? So if you block with this and actually get that intimidated card out of your opponent's hand, they don't get to play it that turn. Sure, maybe the arsenal, whatever, but that slows them down. That is 6 value immediately out of this equipment. That is an extra Husk. That actually is an extra Husk, right? So that's crazy. The equipment suite for this kind of deck really got an upgrade across the board. Across the board. For the cards themselves, I think this list doesn't include too many of the new goodies. Definitely includes Slithering Shadowpede. This card is insane for the kind of cost curve that a aggro deck like this wants to run, because they want to, if at possible, right, always throw that 12 damage. Always throw that 12 damage. If it can do it on 3 cards instead of 4, then boom, you've cheated yourself into an arsenal. Amazing. So an extra 1 cost is not really just about the Art of War curve in a deck like this, but it's the fact that Pulping, Wild Ride, even Tear Limb from Limb, these are all base 2. You'll have 1 floating. If that last 1 floating goes to Slithering, then you 3-card 12'd. You 3-card 12'd and get ahead on Arsenal. So Slithering is a fantastic cost curve for this kind of deck. Obviously, it works naturally well against Dread Screamer and Art of War. But this deck is really, it's built to be aggressive. The other reasons for some of these includes like the Red Hungering Slaughter Beast and the Shaden Death Hydra. Those ones might look a little awkward because it's not too blood debt heavy otherwise, but it's really about Tear Limb from Limb. So Rouse the Ancients. So Rouse the Ancients is another really great card in this kind of deck because, right, baseline, you want to throw 12 a turn. So if Rouse the Ancients on a 4-card hand is going to throw 7 into even 6, that's a 13 damage hand. That is very okay with what you're trying to do, right? It has a higher ceiling than that now, though, because Rouse the Ancients can single-handedly trigger off of Shaden Death Hydra. So you can start to try to build curves now where you just park a 2-cost in Arsenal, park a Swing Big in Arsenal, park a Mark the Beast in Arsenal, park a Hungering in Arsenal. When you draw into Rouse, a blue, and Shaden, which obviously won't happen all the time, but if that's what happens, Rouse can reveal Shaden. Shaden as a yellow then pitches into those 2 costs, and you still have that 13 to 14 to 15 damage 3-card hand now. Well, I mean, it's 3 cards out of hand. You're using Arsenal for it, so it is still 4 cards. The only other way to previously do that was to add the Hungering Slaughter Beasts individually, or like the Swing Bigs, so that on a 4-card hand, when you Rouse revealed, you would pitch a blue for Rouse. The 2 cards you reveal were then a Swing Big and a yellow 6, or like a Hungering Slaughter Beast and a yellow 6, and then that way you could still make the 4-card hand playable. Now with Shaden Death Hydra specifically, you can set up an arsenal to better play with Rouse, which is pretty cool because you actually could not do that before. So that's a little buff as well for use case of Shaden. Otherwise, Shaden is just like a yellow 6. I mean, you probably just block with it, but I think there will be scenarios where the deck is so aggressive that when you flip into the Levia, most often probably Levia consumed, because this deck, it doesn't run too heavy on blood debt. You'll probably only end up with like 3-4 blood debt. So if you can try to line that up to incidentally trigger and flip you into Blazafet Levia consumed without taking too much life, there's a world where you actually play out like a Shaden on another full card hand, where your hand that you're keeping after flip is something like, Wild Ride, and then Shaden out of Banish Zone, and you can just have too much damage for your opponent to contend with and win. So I don't think it's like never going to get played, but that's not the intent of running Shade Death Hydra. But anyway, I think this deck is probably gained the most because this deck was actually really good. This deck was one of the most successful Levia builds for a long time. I mean, Vasily got it to top 4 at Greek Nats. I was playing it on stream, and even though I don't love this playstyle, I barely ever lost with this deck. This deck is also the one I took to the Goliath Gauntlet and beat Pablo Pintor with. That was this same style of deck. This is the same deck I played for the Gauntlet series on Fab, the official Flesh and Blood channel, and I beat Yanji on Briar with it. This is the same build that I bubbled out of a Battle Hardened with at 9th place. So, you know, there's there are results with this kind of list. I don't know if it ever specifically won a Pro Quest or anything, but that is to say, it is a real deck. It's got results behind it. I think it gained a lot with the Slithering Shadowpede cost curve, like a lot. This card cannot be overstated in how important it is for this kind of deck. Insane. This combo, I'm a little less excited about because I think it's probably the first thing to get cut. But if it works, it's gonna feel good. But if it's clunky at all, then like, yeah, you just don't run Shaden for almost any other reason, and this synergy piece just like isn't quite there. And that gets like a little more boring because then all that's really added to the deck is Slithering Shadowpede and Levia consumed more than anything. But that's to say, the deck is going to be very playable out the gate. The last card that I'm not entirely sure about in this list is Diabolic Offering. Mainly, this is just to try to be another 1-cost 6. You know, you've got Mark the Beast, so if you discard it, then all of a sudden Diabolic is now a 6, right? Which is pretty big. Same deal, like with your Beast Withins. Once that banishes something, adds it to hand, your Diabolics are now a 6. Off the back of a Dread Screamer, Diabolics are now a 6. Art of War, Diabolics are now a 6. So, yeah, I'm not sure 3 is really right, because you do have so many non-blocks in this list. So many. But that is kind of the point of this list. You really don't try to block. You are not blocking. With this build, you say no blocks. And you try to just put your opponent on an insane clock, and then just wear them out. And if you can't win with like a Pulping Dominate, you win by just going a little too wide, which is definitely possible. Because you've got breakpoints in the deck with like Swing Big on a wide turn, Red Graveling on a wide turn, Red Hungering, Blue Rouse. Not to mention, maybe you actually get off Tear Limb Hydra, 26 damage. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, this is, I think, one of the decks that gained the most in terms of what was previously good in Levia, and adding just a little sprinkle of her new cards. This deck really won. It got a lot better. Because this is actually one of the decks that could contend with aggro as well. This is one of the few Levia builds that could just say, even without Bloodrush, just I'm going to race you and it might work. Because there are those like random cost curves that happen where you pulping, pitch a blue, you end up with another blue in hand, and you just go, okay, 3-card 12, like no sweat. Pulping, claw, and like that's it. So you always had like a few hidden high rate plays in the deck, and now you have like more guaranteed high rate plays in the deck. So I could see it. I really could see it being a decent play. Diabolics are kind of the big question piece. Shaden, big question piece. And not running any Reckless is also kind of mid. I'm not sure about that one. But for now, you know, I want to see if I can, you know, win without Reckless. Because this deck almost never won with Reckless anyway, but it was nice to have it in the deck. Okay, that's deck number 1. That's Bloodrush Aggro. Bloodrush Aggro. Catch up with questions in the chat about this kind of deck. No Frenzy in this build? No. This is not a Frenzy build at all. There is very light Blood Debt, and the Blood Debt cards you're playing are half the time like just for you know, like pitch reasons more than anything. Like this Blood Debt doesn't count. It's a pitch card. This Blood Debt probably doesn't count too much. It's a pitch card. This Blood Debt card probably doesn't count because you're trying to pitch it into whatever like the Rouse trigger's on. This one you're discarding, you know. So your Blood Debt package that's playable is really only a few cards here. You do not go hard enough on Blood Debt at all to warrant the Frenzy play. No, I don't think so. But maybe it splits off and can be its own like spin on this version of the deck, because Frenzy does get better if your turns can be wider, and this deck definitely likes to go wide. I mean, it does. It's got the Art of War's Bloodrush, Pulping, Dread Screamer's Wild Rides. It is probably the widest hand-by-hand Levia deck you could play. So maybe Frenzy, because of that, has a bit of a role, but it's not what I'm experimenting with, at least out the gate. I don't think. No questions about Hydra? No. Yeah, stapled. Right in the list. Can you explain your thoughts behind the 3 hold the line in the side? Yeah, so this is just, like, the sideboard doesn't matter right now, because the sideboard is just going to be whatever Levia needs to answer to. Like, Levia's game plan inherently needs to consume most of your deck space, because she is very tied to her 6s, her Blood Debt synergies, her blue counts, yada yada. You don't flex too much. So in the sideboard right now, I'm just playing around with the ideas of, like, cards that might be relevant coming into this next meta. First and foremost, Shadow Puppetry CNC. Shadow Puppetry is another way to force go again on a hand, and it lines up really well next to CNC against Rangers specifically, and the cost curve got better because now you're pitching a blue for it, and you have an extra 1 cost to throw after the CNC. So that's another 4-card 13, right? That's coming from this deck. That's what the deck wants to do. 4-card 12. Now you're saying 4-card 13 plus a hit effect on CNC breakpoint? Pretty good. Hold the line specifically is, I think, one of the better, like, sideboard slots you could probably add to Levia, because in a matchup where you want to block, a lot of your cards that don't block are probably your blues. You know, you've got Deadwood, you've got Diabolics now, you had sometimes like Doomsday, Eye of Ophidia, Reckless Swing, like Tear Limb from Limb, Expendable Arms. Like, your blues always were a little hard to just scale down and block with. That's just the nature of how her decks are. So hold the line as a potential swap into a kind of clunky blocking, like non-block blue slot, just to say, okay, this matchup I really do care about blocking, 3 of a kind matchup, or maybe Katsu even. Then you can just swap in a card that would otherwise kind of punt your hand by not being able to block into a card that could block 5 all by itself. I think this card makes a lot of sense for how Levia sideboards, but we'll see. These are just like my guesses. These are just my guesses on the sideboard here. This whole deck is a guess, but I mean, it's a deck that had results previously, and I think it just got better. So we'll see what ends up happening with it. Matt Folks is in the chat. Matt Folks. Levia being the last thing added to Talishar is killing you. Oh, Matt, hold steady, my brother. Do not leave us. It's amazing enough that you joined the League of Levia. Pretty funny that you're only a disciple of Demonastery. Like, you gotta get some, you gotta just go win a pro tour with her, I think. Then we'll get you up higher in the ranks. So please do that for us. But it is cool to see some big names finally showing up and caring about Levia. Gives me faith. Although Matt Folks is a madman, I know every build of Levia you're gonna be rolling scabs. You are a scabs roller. You are, and that terrifies me because I'm convinced now that you don't have to play Scabskins in most Levia decks, because this is the same block, and it's the guaranteed action point where now guarantees are going to be such a big deal. Such a big deal for Levia. You're an optimal gamer, but the way you've said it before is Scabskins is optimal lines. Which, oof, okay, we'll leave it at that. The problem with no Scabs is new Prism. Well, yeah, I mean, Scabs will always be a sideboard. It will always be a sideboard package because of Prism existing. You do have to have it, especially with some of the Prism builds I've seen so far. Not everyone is super hot on the Figments, and instead they're just using Prism to be an Aura spam list with Iris. And that build, like, I don't know if it's actually good or what, but everyone remembers how toxic just Aura spam was. And sure, it doesn't have Luminaris, but Iris is scary in its own right. So you do want to clear those suckers. So Scabskins Gamblers is just going to have to be a part of your deck. It will be. It will be for Prism. Oh, Fan I Am. Your thoughts on New Levia and CC versus Blitz? Thanks for the donation, first of all. I think that will actually text-to-speech. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not sure if it does it for the YouTube donation. But thank you for that. I am interested to see what happens to her in Blitz, because... Oh wait, is it going to do it? I think it will. One second.
Thoughts on New Levia in CC versus Blitz?
Okay, yeah, it did do it. Cool. I really haven't put much thought to her at all in Blitz, because my next events that I care about are Classic Constructed, and of course I am really trying to make sure that some version of Levia is playable for Nats, because I'm going to Nats, I'm playing in it, and I want to play the best Levia deck there is. Even if she's not like A tier, I'm gonna fight to at least get her to a place where I think I can play her at the A tier level. But for Blitz, I mean, obviously she just got upgrades, right? For Blitz, I think these pieces, the grasp pieces, are a really big deal. Same deal with Scowling Fleshbag, very big deal. Blitz they just are shorter games, right? And so the more value you can pack into a shorter game, the better. Also in Blitz, this kind of list was always this kind of list was the one I had most success with in Blitz, funny enough, because same deal. Like if you can just throw damage on the board, your opponent has to care. And now, like we're seeing, Slithering Shadowpede works really well into that playstyle. What I don't know at all is what happens with how playable these are in Blitz. I'm thinking Blazonfet Levia Consumed most likely is what's triggering.
Other than to help support the league get to Nat's smile.
Yo, Charles Dillman. Nice, man. I didn't even catch that one. I'm so deep on Levia. Love to see it, Charles. Thank you a lot for the $10 there. So, I think in Blitz specifically, Blazonfet Levia Consumed is probably going to be something you intentionally trigger if you've got like a singular Dread Screamer or like Endless Maw. You know, if you've got even 1 to 2 really good pieces, then you'll probably want to just flip to Levia Consumed and just get that extra hand. You know, get that extra 5 intellect for like 2 turns. But I don't think you're going to be doing a lot of fighting to stock up the graveyard or stock up the Vantage Zone really quickly to get full value out of Consumed. That's just not the length of game that Blitz plays for. So I think Blazonfet probably will never get huge value in Blitz, but if it can get even that extra 1 or 2 cards, that is huge. Like that alone is huge, right? So yeah, I'm like, we'll see. I really haven't put much thought into it. I do think Levia Redeemed probably almost never triggers unless your opponent is trying to just hard block you out, which can happen in Blitz. In Blitz specifically, when your opponent's like, oh my god, you know, you actually deal a lot of damage. I'm gonna start just blocking everything you do. One of the problems can be that in Blitz Levia, you only have 2 ofs, right? So if you waste resources early, like even had to block with a Dread Screamer early or something, then your deck's ceiling like falls off the face of the planet. So there is a world where your opponent is trying to just trickle you out, let you die to Blood Debt, and then Levia Redeemed can kick in and be a bit of a heal, which in Blitz, oh my god, like you get to heal 7 off this, incredible. But I don't know anything about the Blitz format right now. I've never even played an official game with it post the whole like drone unnerfing, so I'm not the right person to speak for it. But she got better, obviously. Like she did get better, and I do like her a lot in Blitz. I think most people like her in Blitz. Oh, Fan I Am dropping a lot. You think she'll be vulnerable to Arachne contract Vanish decks, so you predict you'll see more Arachne? Like I said, I just don't know too much about Blitz. I think, yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know. I know nothing about the meta. I've only heard musings about...
I think she'll be vulnerable to Arachne contract banish decks. So I predict we'll see more Arachne being played. Thoughts?
Could be. I've never seen Arachne. The only hype I heard around Blitz was how like some Riptide drone deck was doing really well. And that kind of list, I think Levia probably doesn't worry too much about. You know, if your opponent's trying to just get to a point where, you know, their full-handed drones just like blocks you out, that's never going to happen with Levia. She goes over decks that only have block 2s pretty easily. So we'll just have to see the format. I'll just have to see the format firsthand before I can say anything. But anyway, that's Bloodrush Aggro. Bloodrush Aggro. Drop the link in chat. We'll drop it again. Whoa, Canadian 50. Thanks for the coverage, man. See you at Nats. Dude, Ty, thank you so much. Yeah, man, I'll be there. That's
Thanks
also
for the coverage, my man. See you at Nats.
That's also big news. Obviously, it's coming up later in the pipeline, but I will be streaming Canadian Nationals. I've said that before, I think. But I am very excited for that. I want to make that... I mean, it's going to be a real chance. No one clip this. It's going to be a real chance to try to show off like the most professional level coverage I can possibly muster in Savage Feats. Like, not quite like versus SCG Con or anything, but there will be an obvious parallel of like, we'll see what US Nats looked like, right? We'll see what US Nats looked like because it will have happened like 2 weeks previous. And then we will have a little bit of a window to try to make Canadian Nats like as amazing as possible. The player base in Canada is insane. Such a concentration of talent. And I really want to make whatever coverage we see just the best in the business, the most improved upon as I can make it from everything I've done previously, not to mention what we could learn from how US Nats is handled. I'm looking forward to it a lot. I want to do an amazing job for Canadian Nats. I'm very excited for the opportunity. Very excited. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to move on from Bloodrush Aggro. There's a lot of decks to talk about. Let's, this one's kind of funny. This one's kind of funny. And one that I definitely know the least about, but it's similar in theory to what a Bloodrush Aggro deck is doing. And that is just a Berserk Levia deck. So, Levia always, in theory, was more playable with Berserk because you get a little bit of banish synergy with Berserk. Actually, when you discard, banishing that 6, now all of a sudden that's turning on cards like Graveling Growl. It also, in theory, could start to set up like Deep Rooted Evil for one. Mutated Mass even made its way into some lists, right? But now there's extra synergy in Diabolic Offering. Once you're on a Berserk turn, Diabolic Offering is an extra blue 6 in your deck, which is pretty cool. Pretty dang cool, actually. And other than that, like, oh, Slithering Shadowpede again. Similar in terms of like what the cost curve is doing to the Bloodrush Aggro deck. This is a bit of an ad. But other than that, there's not too much else that I think changes for a Berserk Levia deck. It's the same idea as Bloodrush Aggro, where you're just trying to dump damage, but you have potentially higher ceilings because you could force a Berserk turn and just start going crazy wide off of like Pulping, Wild Ride, Bare Fangs, Savage Feast. Like, Berserk, in a way, can unlock baby Bloodrush turns, or if you combo it with Bloodrush, then your Bloodrush turn can go 4 wide, potentially more reliably, which is pretty cool, but it's never been my favorite way to play Levia because I think it is the most inconsistent. The fact that you're running Berserk means it can miss on other copies of Berserk, just baseline, not to mention it can miss on Bloodrush Bellow, and then there's really not that many misses, though, anymore, because even these are going to count as a 6. But like your Tear Limb from Limbs, they won't count. Your Ivophidia, I mean, this doesn't have to be in the deck, but that won't count. There's the least amount of misses that there's ever been in a Berserk list, to be fair. I mean, look at this. That's 6, 9, 10. There's only 10 misses. 10 misses in a Berserk deck, which is, I think, the best ratios we've seen in terms of like the cards looking very playable other than that and really not getting into much filler. Because Riled Up is probably the weakest filler card you're adding, but it's never been bad in this style of deck because after a Wild Ride, it was still like a 13 damage hand, right? 13 damage 4, which was not terrible. So I'm not like super eager to play this myself, but I think the deck did get some wins. It did get some wins because you can't ignore the fact that like the Berserk misses are really starting to weed themselves out of the deck, right? An extra blue 6 was added to the deck. An extra 1-cost 6 was added to the deck. I don't want this to be the best Levia build. I really don't enjoy this playstyle because it's basically like, you know, you keep your hand, you try to go for it, and if it just doesn't work, then you've done horrible things to yourself. You've sunk into like the worst rates imaginable, where you're like paying for Berserk and it just doesn't do anything. And that feels so overwhelmingly miserable to me. It's almost worse than a 1 into a 1, because at least a 1 into a 1, you made the, like, there's nothing you could really do about it. Like, you rolled, you used your Gambler's Gloves, which was your safety net, and then it was just a 1. Okay, boom, unlucky, that's it, whatever. But with Berserk, you chose to keep this hand. You fought to keep this hand, and you're like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'm going to play out Berserk, I'm going to have my nuts turn, but then Berserk just misses, and that's it. There is no safety net. There's no gamblers to re-roll that. You're just stuck. You're like, okay, well, that is trash. But anyway, there's still wins. There's absolutely still wins for this deck. Absolutely still wins for this deck. So we're going to drop this. We're going to drop this. Alec Myers. Yo, man, love you too. Isn't Diabolic a miss? No, it's not a miss, because on a Berserk turn, Berserk banishes the card you discard, right? Until end of turn, whenever you discard a random 6, banish it. So on the Berserk turn itself, right? Whatever card you discard, banishes. Then Diabolic Offering, if a card of 6 or more has been put in your banish zone, this will be a 6. So on the first Berserk trigger, even before the reveal, Diabolic is already seeing itself as a 6. So, yeah, I mean, in any other capacity, it's really not a 6. You're not going to be doing too much banishing otherwise. It's really Dread Screamer and like the Mark of the Beast, right? But on the Berserk turn, the Beast Within turn, things like that, Diabolic is a 6, and that's when it matters, right? Because you want the Berserk to draw you more 6s. This being a blue 6, you're drawing resources. You can go harder because it's not like you've parked a blue in Arsenal. You've parked like another draw discard in Arsenal. It helps you just go wider and wider. So yeah, not a miss in the Berserk capacity specifically. All right. Anyway, least excited about this list, but can't ignore it. Can't ignore it. All right. This one is the one I'm most excited to play. Most excited to play. Full Recursion Levia Redeemed. Now, this is probably the only build I've really tried to like make work around Hellhammer, because I don't think it was too much of an effort. Like, this list needed a weapon, and Hellhammer is the perfect weapon. So apart from like Hellhammer slotting naturally in, I don't think this card has too many other uses. But it is the perfect card that this kind of deck needed, and I think it's single-handedly like the reason why this deck might be insane. If Oldhim was still in format, I think this would be the best Levia deck by a mile, no question, absolutely no question. The recursion package of Levia is one of the most degen things possible in the game, where you just loop Howl from Beyond's Deep-Rooted Evils at basically no cost to your own deck, because you'll never run out of the ways to trigger it. You can run Rainbow Dread Screamers. You can run Rainbow Unworldlies. You could run Rainbow Convulsions, but I don't do that. And it doesn't matter that those aren't 6s, because the 6 that will be left in your graveyard at the end of your turn is Deep-Rooted Evil. And so you just loop it, you loop it, you loop it, and you're spending one real card from deck every turn to deal like 12 minimum on most of the time 3-card hands, which is crazy. Crazy. Like that is a nutso rate. And it's my favorite way to play Levia because it's the most, I think it's like, in terms of game plans, it's one of the most adaptive and like hard to pull off because, you don't always see your recursion pieces early, right? If you see them early, fantastic, but you don't. And so you have to actually navigate like a very tumultuous like game plan up until your recursion's found. And then once it's found, it's about cleaning your graveyard until you can get the exact like loop going. And then it's about maintaining the loop, right? So this version of Levia, I think, is one of the harder ones to play. It's my absolute favorite, and I think it gained a lot as well. But we got a donation real quick.
What are you most hoping to see in this set? I hope for an Arachne specialization. 2 hero versions and only 1 specialization no one uses? They better have 1.
Fan I am. Unfortunately, we do know the full set at this point, and there is no Arachne specialization. They did give us Surgical Extraction out as a new Majestic. So yeah, unfortunately for this set, there isn't going to be anything for Arachne. I do feel a little bad for people who assumed that it was maybe a normal supplemental. I also assumed it was a normal supplemental, and everyone would get something, because they at first showed us those Unity cards, and the Unity cards made most people believe, I think, that, oh cool, like everyone's getting a little something. And yeah, these ones are tied to like the PvE aspect, but maybe Dash is in there for her little spice. Arachne's in there for her little like extra cards of the set. Because it didn't explicitly say that we would only get the like light and shadow like talent stuff pretty much until we saw the full set. I think that was still just like never confirmed anywhere. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, people throughout the entire reveal season were holding their breath in anticipation of kind of splash support for every class, and it just didn't happen. So for the people who cared about that, I do feel a little bad. I heard some people on Twitter complaining that like they pre-ordered however many cases because they expected to need, to find cards across like all their decks, whatever, and it turns out that that's really not what this set is going to be doing. I feel a little bad for those people, but at the same time, I think the more sets we see, the less confusion there will ever be, because now there will be precedents for everything. So if this is like the only set that makes people feel a little bad on release, sure, that's fine. It'll happen. But it also made a lot of people feel really good on release, because there's a lot of really cool chase cards. A lot of people wanted the support that came from this set. It's a very thematic set. So I think there's more wins than, or more pros than cons in this set specifically. But sure. Unfortunately for people like you, Fan I Am, there is no Arachne support. There is no Arachne support. But you're here. You're tuning in for Levia. You're tuning in for Levia support. And we can keep going over that, which is really exciting. Okay, so anyway, I think this deck is probably the hardest to also explain and conceptualize. So let's try to just give everyone a refresher on what the loop actually is, because I definitely have plenty of games with it. In fact, if you want to see one of the coolest things to happen live on stream, I did a live stream with, where is it? Alan. Am I blind? Or was it just a long time? Oh my god, it was a long time ago. Alan, who had that starter 4-0 record at Pro Tour, before he unfortunately bombed draft, he joined me for his kind of like deck tech of the Levia he was playing, which was very low blood, just like a Pummel deck, basically. Kind of very similar to what we saw in the old days with Nervash's hybrid Levia. But anyway, so we went through his deck tech, right? And then we played some games with his list. And it was all just like kind of good rate Levia stuff, you know, nothing too exciting because you're not playing into Blood Dead. And if you're not playing into Blood Dead, it's really not that exciting. But then I accidentally queued with a recursion list just by accident. I thought I had his deck queued in, and we decided to play it out anyway. And he had never in his life had he seen a recursion Levia list. So Royalty Card Gaming, oh my god, I'm burning myself out. I'm talking so much. Once your text to speech comes up, I'll answer. Let me drink something. Ooh, that is some bad coffee.
Is Hexagore able to be viable now?
Yes, Hexagore is viable now. I will show you that deck in like 2 seconds. We're going over all 6 lists that I'm brewing currently because Talishar is not working yet. And I just like have lost my voice on camera. You hear this? My voice is gone. 1 second. Okay. Wow, it's still a little scratchy, but we're back. Anyway, to wrap up story time. So I queued up a Recursion Levia list, right? Thank you for the donation, by the way. Today's been kind of nuts. People are donating a ton, and that really means a lot, everybody. Just to let you know again, kind of the background, because, I mean, these streams have been popping off. I wrapped up my job. I was on contract, and I wrapped up my job at the end of May. So ever since June, I've been just looking for new jobs, trying to work more on like streaming consistently throughout the day, right? While you are all at work, I'm here on stream. And there was like a small chance, like in back of my mind, you know, just like a little withering light back there of hope, that I thought maybe this could be a full-time thing. And unfortunately, the reality is I don't think Flesh and Blood community is big enough to really become a full-time content creator or streamer unless you really push like merch or like content Patreons or something like that, which is not really what my angle has been. There will be merch coming very soon, which is dope, but it's not out yet, so don't worry about it. So I really appreciate everyone donating because it's been a long summer so far of just hopping on and doing it all for fun because Levia is hella fun, and we've been playing so many decks this past summer. Literally, like, almost every deck, except, like, Kano, which I feel bad about. I did want to play Kano. So that it's just been a very fun summer, and I consider myself lucky that I've been able to share it with everyone and make content out of it and have everyone hang out. It's been so much fun. So just to plug again, because I think there's more people here, I'm going to be giving out, at some point pretty soon, I'll make the announcement. Rip stream? Wait, did it die? I don't think it died. All right. Pretty soon, as a thank you, I'm going to be giving out all these signed artist proofs. Come on, focus camera. We've got normal Levia artist proof, right? Artist proofs, if you've never seen them, are blank on the backside. Young Levia. Come on, camera. Young Levia. Also artist proof. I mean, these are all artist proofs, whatever. The, like, token Levia. The Blasmafet, OG Blasmafet, and then this is kind of the biggest deal one. It is the Marvel Blasmafet artist proof signed by Wisnutan. Oh my god, camera. Signed by Wisnutan. It's the only way to get this card in non-foil. Artist proof. Got it signed at Worlds. So pretty soon, I'm going to be doing a giveaway for all that stuff across all the different ways that this community has grown. So it'll be across Twitter, YouTube, Discord, Patreon. I want to make sure these go out back to the community pretty soon as a thank you. So I'll make some like announcement post after that. But today was kind of a big milestone for that because we hit over 1,000 members in the Legal Levia Discord, and we're almost at 5,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is also just craziness to me. I mean, I remember I did like this whole 400 subscriber celebration 2 years ago where I did the dumbest skit ever, where I like lit candles and like had a pile of beef jerky and like made some like corny ass Levia joke. Like I took that video down. It was trash, but that's the kind of stuff I was doing in the early days over milestones like 400 subs, which to me, I mean, that's still incredible that we ever even hit 400, right? But now to see it rocket all the way up to where it is now, and have other things in the works going as well with like Savage Feats and all that, really cool. I never would have seen myself doing this 2 years ago. I consider myself very lucky. So thank you, everyone. Fan I am, back at it again. Sounds like a fun video. Oh, no one's going to see that video ever again. It is unlisted till the day I die. All right. Okay. Anyway, back to Fan I am, actually. What'd you say? I don't think I have the text-to-speech on this screen. Red Zone Rogue gave props to me. You're the forefront of Fab content and the first porter call for Fab news. I'm the man. Really? Oh, thanks, Kel. Red Zone Rogue, like back when I started, right? Like DM Armada, Red Zone Rogue, they were already massive. I think Arsenal Pass was also up there back then as well. And like Fabrica. Those were like the big names.
Red Zone Rogue gave props to you. At the forefront of Fab content and our first port of call for Fab news. You're the man.
Thank you. It's like a second pat on the back. I'm hearing it. I'm hearing the echo. Yeah, I remember back when I started, those were the people I really looked up to. And I thought it was always going to be that kind of relationship of like, they are the pillars and I would be in my own little like Levia lane. But it hasn't, I mean, it just didn't go that way. Levia now is so popular, which is incredible, but also the work that I've put into do production and do video series and just branch out and try other content as well to actually grow to where I am now is just crazy. I was on someone's podcast. It was Flesh and Blood Brothers recently. And in the intro, he said that I'm like one of the OGs, one of the golden boys of Fab. And I just couldn't believe that. Like in my head still, I'm just a fan. Like I'm just here to hang out. I just really love the game. I love that James and we have our drama, you know, like that's like the coolest part of the whole deal. To have a personal relationship with people in LSS, like that's always, like for me, those were always like the extreme highs to feel like I mattered, like even a little bit. There's a real impact, I guess, that the whole Mansant YouTube channel has made. And I just want to appreciate everyone for tuning in and making that possible. I would be here whether I had 5 viewers or over 200 because I just really love it. And I don't even know where I'm rambling off with this, but it is just very cool. It's very surreal because outside of Fab, my life's not going super well, not gonna lie. You know, unemployment sucks. Didn't think I'd be this unemployed, but you know, I live in a very barren area for what my expertise is in, I guess. And to fill that void with something that's just so exciting rather than something that could just be kicking me down, like this weight of, oh my God, like I'm not doing anything with my life. It's a nice counter. It's a very nice counter. So thank you all for making me feel good, you know. Thanks a lot. Okay. Anyway. Where was I even going? What was this story time? My expertise is a little all over the place, but I was doing my master's for... I was doing my master's for speech pathology, and I only had a year left to complete my master's degree. But then COVID hit, and COVID destroyed speech pathology, like just destroyed it, because the clinic, all of a sudden going to clinic and having clients was just not possible, right? It's just not possible, because now with all the health safety measures in place, no one was allowed to go into the clinic, especially because we were working a lot with the elderly, with speech pathology, right? My clients in particular had been mostly bilingual children. I was doing speech pathology both in English and Spanish. And then we kind of ported over to kind of make up for the fact that clients couldn't come in anymore to an online system. And the online system was miserable. It was so unfair to ask parents to, make their kid log on to their phone or computer or whatever for like a 30-minute speech session. And it was just so miserable for the parents. I was so sympathetic for like their situation. It just felt terrible. And I hated that like I had to kind of force them to do it. Oh, we got another donation. Royalty Card Gaming. Keep up the great work. Blasphemous provides. You provide Royalty Card Gaming. God damn. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Keep up the great work, man. Blasphemous provides.
Thank you. So long story short on that, I really didn't like the spot I was in with SpeechPath because it was not doing well post-COVID, and it felt like we just couldn't get much done anymore. And it was so much was up to the parents who were already in like a really stressful situation to kind of make their kid interact with me that I took a step back and said, you know what, like this is just it's not healthy. It's not good. I don't like all the stress of it. I don't like the stress on the parents. I don't like being a part of it. And the kid is really not getting much out of it. I would rather the kid have 30 minutes to, spend at home off of the computer than an extra 30 minutes trying to do speech through a phone, right? It was just terrible. So I took a step back and started doing a boot camp instead for user experience design. And user experience design for me was like my only into the tech world because I did my undergrad in psych. So I did a boot camp, and it was like a 4-month boot camp. I felt like only mildly prepared, but I did get a job like right out of boot camp, which almost no one else did in that cohort, right? I got hired immediately because of like the capstone project that I'd been working on, which was just this like Lego app. It's kind of cool. So I got a job on this at this consulting firm, and I worked there for a little bit over a year, and it was a little all over the place. It was remote, and so I feel like I didn't really gain any expertise. I just became a jack of all trades rather than got any better at user experience design. I went in with some pretty decent skills, but then I just became like a role filler because no one was like too tech savvy at the company. So they just like kind of had me do everything. And that hurt in the end more than it helped because all of a sudden, like I felt less confident in calling myself a UX designer and more so just like equipped to deal with this one company. But then they stopped getting as many contracts, the work slowed down a ton, and I decided to look for work elsewhere. And so I got hired again at a different design firm, this one as a UX content writer, which was actually like a pretty easy job. It's really just about understanding a brand's language, the way they use words, whatever, and then you just write as them, right? And it was like almost a little too easy. And it really felt like, once again, I was not learning anything. I was just kind of coasting, and I really hate the feeling of coasting. So once that contract ended, which was what ended in May, I actually don't know how to get back in to the job field because I'm not like the most qualified UX designer. I've just had roles that I happened into and was really good at the time, but none of them were permanent. And it feels very hard to break back in because in the past like 2 years of work, not only have I like basically given up on SpeechPath, I can't go back to that. To keep calling myself like user experience designer is a bit of a stretch because the roles I've had were like UX adjacent, not actual UX design. So I don't know. I don't really know what I'm doing anymore. I'm not quite sure what I'm qualified for, but I've got some job applications out, and we'll just see what happens. It's a very confusing point in my life. I don't enjoy it. All right. But there we go. I do enjoy Flesh and Blitz. Let's get back to it. Is it something I'm passionate for? I mean, at the beginning, I really liked it. But I have not found that same passion in the jobs that came after the fact. Okay. Anyway, that's it. That's it on me. Let's wrap up this other story. Anyway, if that person's even still here, right? If you want to see really good Recursion Levia gameplay, at the end of this stream that I did with Alan, we ended up playing a Recursion Levia deck together. And compared to the excitement level of like these early games where it's just, no blood debt Levia, right? Into what a blood debt Levia feels like. Oh my God, it's night and day. It's night and day because Recursion Levia is just so different. Alan is freaking out. He's like, oh my God, dude, you can actually do that. That's crazy. You're looping them. Like it went nuts. The game just actually was so good. So I would go back and look at that game because you get someone's live reaction of like, holy crap, this is broken, into me just brain on fire trying to make optimal plays. Unfortunately, this is kind of the inherent problem with the Recursion deck is you loved this matchup. You loved this matchup, right? Look at this, 18-1. 18-1. You loved playing into Oldhim, but there is no more Oldhim. So that is my one fear. That is my one fear with how Recursion Levia is going to play now, is you lost your best matchup. Your best matchup was just eating the Guardians alive, and you just don't get that anymore. But here's an interesting POV, right? If we look at this game, I'm covering up old me. This is Recursion Levia. If there was one way where I might lose this game, if there's one way, a singular way where I might lose this game, it'd be me taking Blood Debt. That'd be it. I take Blood Debt, I die. I mean, not this turn, but, in theory, next turn, right? I would take Blood Debt and I die. That's the one way I lose this game. It's like the Levia zone, right? Imagine with new Demi-Hero Levia. Not possible. It would just not be possible. That is so freaking cool. Because in this scenario, right, they're at 1, I'm at 18. Let's say next turn, I whiff Blood Debt for whatever reason. I take Blood Debt and would die. Not anymore. I flip to Consumed, and I still get, like, basically 2 more hands of play before I'm actually out of deck, right? Because I would, banish ton of cards, sure, but I'd draw up and then be able to pitch those cards back in and then draw those up. And, like, probably within that window, I could end the game. So that's pretty cool, right? You look at that automatically and say Consumed is just a net upgrade over how this game could have been lost, which is cool. Anyway. Funny enough, I don't think Consumed is the way that I want to play this kind of all-in Recursion Levia deck. Bro was literally born to stream. How are you speaking nonstop? No, that's the speech pathologist in me. That's the speech pathologist in me. When you work with kids all day, number one, you had to match their energy, and of course it's speech pathology. You had to get them talking, You can't be the silent one. And so I have maybe it's almost like a code switching thing where there's certain environments where I can literally just go on forever. But I'm really not that way in person. In person, I feel like I'm much more shut in. Like I'm just, I'm focused on my thing, whatever. But there are definitely certain environments where I don't know. I'm in the right mindset for it. And this comes from Speech Path, I promise you. If you ever have tried to keep a 5-year-old entertained and to stick to a lesson plan, you have to just keep talking forever. You cannot let their attention dart anywhere else. Okay. Working with kids, working with chat, I don't see much of a difference. That's it. Okay. So let's get back to this list. I think truly this is the most exciting way to explore Levia with the new card pool, because it is just going to be, I think, the most different play experience for most people looking to dip into Levia. If you've been a Levia player for a while, you've probably tried the recursion build a couple times, but it's never been the favorite way to play Levia, even within the Levia community. Most people prefer aggro. They see brute. They want to unga bunga. I get it. My favorite Levia has always been this style, and people who are finally looking at this hero probably will need to... Oh, what's up? Oh. People who are looking from the outside in on this hero will probably need to commit the most time into learning this style of deck over a Bloodrush, more aggro style, right? So let's go over kind of the highs of what this deck is trying to do. So baseline, what a recursion deck is doing is trying to achieve a loop where you either loop double Howl from Beyond and a 2-cost Banisher into a 3-card 12 hand, right? Because let's say you have 2 Howl from Beyond. The second one's in the sideboard. Let's just put this, so imagine there's 2 Howl from Beyond in the list. On a 3-card hand, that is a 2-cost Banisher and 2 blues, you can, off of a singular card in graveyard, a singular 6, right? You have 1 card in your graveyard. Your opponent thinks, ha! I'm going to make him lose to Blood Debt. You know, if I don't attack, they can't fill the yard. You say, okay, I'm going to play Howl off of 2 blues, 2 floating. Then you play a 2-cost attack. Hungering Slaughterbeast, Writhing Beasthulk, Dread Screamer. I mean, hell, it could be a Boneyard, whatever you need to. Those then banish the 3 cards in graveyard, the last attack that you had, and the 2 Howls. Now on that 3-card hand, you've reset the 2 Howls. You've come in for a 3-card hand for 13 most damage, or 12 Dominate, or just 12 normal, or 12 Go again, or 12 with 1 floating, right? Those are kind of all the curves. Then your graveyard is left at 1 card again. Your graveyard is left at the singular attack that you played back in your graveyard. So your next turn, you can just do it again. Your next turn, you can just Howl, you're at 3 cards in graveyard, play another attack. Boom. Now, that doesn't actually like loop forever, right? Because you do need to keep spending 2-cost attacks. You also only need 3 cards to do it, so like what are you doing with that 4th card? It can't always be the card you arsenal. You need to use it at times, so sometimes it goes to blocking. It's not like a loop that goes on forever. There's a lot that can contribute to you know the development of a game state, right? Like there's the extra card in play, your opponent's doing something, whatever. But that is just to call out the power of you being able to reset and loop Howl from Beyonds on a really strong cost curve that is above rate, right? The other way to play into recursion is with Deep Rooted Evil. And this is the slower way to do it, but it's my favorite way because it has much more of like a late game power than the Howl loop. Because the Howl loop is tied to specifically these 2 cost, it's tied to specifically needing 2 Howls, but the Deep Rooted Evil loop is tied to a Howl, a Deep Rooted Evil, and then either an Unworldly Bellow, a Dread Screamer, or a Convulsions, right? Or Convulsions. So you've got all these cards. 9. What's 9 plus 9? 18! 21. You've got 21 enablers for the Deep Rooted Evil Howl loop. So the way this one works is your graveyard is going to most likely... I mean, you're going to kick it off with like A6, but at some point it's going to be the Deep Rooted Evil over and over again. But just imagine this state, right? When you kick into this kind of loop, your graveyard is like, you know, let's say 2 cards. A 6 and a, you know, some blocking chaff. Like, you know, you've got like a extra, I don't know, there's an Art of War in your graveyard, whatever. That's your graveyard. Now, on your turn, you can pay into Howl, right? Your hand is going to be 3 blues and a Dread Screamer, let's say. This is kind of the ceiling of it. You're going to pay into a Howl. Howl goes to graveyard, right? You've got 1 floating, 3 in hand. You then pitch another blue for the Dread Screamer. The Dread Screamer then banishes the 3 cards in graveyard, which is the Howl again, and the 2 other cards. You've now got 2 floating, and another blue in hand, right? Dread Screamer comes in for 9 go again. Then you play Howl again, the same Howl that you banished, off the 2 floating. Then with that last blue in hand, you play Deep Rooted Evil. You have just come in for 18 on a 4-card hand. And you've only spent 1 real card. You've only spent 1 real card to do it. 1. Everything else was just blues. Everything else was just blues and cards in your recursion engine, right? Even the same Howl can get played twice. So kind of the core of, and the Unworldly version of that is a little bit less. It's just 3 cards in hand. 1 is Unworldly, the other 2 are blues. You just do Howl, then you Unworldly, and that's 1 blue, and then your next blue is Deep Rooted Evil, right? So it's a 12 or 13 damage hand off 3 cards, which is also a really good rate. And same deal, you only used 1 card. So that's the idea of recursion, is you are just abusing the hell out of Howl from Beyond and Deep Rooted Evil, and just milking these things for incredible amounts of value with so many enablers that you'll just never run out, and you'll never miss on Blood Debt because Deep Rooted Evil is consistently refilling the graveyard. And this is in its own a 6. But there's a couple reasons that this deck is not very consistent and takes like a longer, it takes longer to get started, right? To kick off the engine. Number 1, you have a lot of banished 3s. It's very hard for this deck to be proactive because you don't have many playables early game. So you need to just kind of like block a lot. Your early game is just slow, and that's not very exciting for most people. You're just blocking, right? But as soon as you start finding your recursion pieces, you can try to play some hands and really fight for value. You do have really strong Levia hands, obviously. You've got your Endless Maw plays, you've got your Dread Screamer plays, which there's no Gravelings in this list, but there'd still be Diabolic Offering now. Even if you pitch into a Deep Rooted Evil If that's in your banish zone, that's the same as a Dread Screamer curve. That's 3 cards for 12. Because it's a Dread Screamer plus your pitch card for Dread Screamer plus a blue for Deeper Rooted Evil. Deeper Rooted Evil came from Banished. So it's still the same 3 card 12, right? And you're resetting Deeper Rooted Evil in Graveyard. So anyway, it takes a little bit longer to start setting it up, but you have this card, Shadow Blazophet, that lets you pull Blood Deck cards directly out of your deck. This is a pre-Dust Till Dawn list as well. No, this has Dust Till Dawn cards. It's just I don't think this list gained much from Dust Till Dawn other than Hellhammer and Levia Redeemed, plus some like sideboard stuff we're going to go into in a second. But anyway, Shadow Blazophet is your biggest enabler for this kind of strategy, because if you see this early and you hit it, then you are like 50% of the way to victory already. That's literally how strong this card is, because your entire game plan is reliant on looping singleton cards, a Howl from Beyond and a Deep Rooted Evil. So I've tried running higher copies of Deep Rooted Evil, tried running higher copies of Howl. It gets a little finicky, but in the right meta, like you kind of have to do that. Like if the meta is a little too fast, then you have to just add more copies of the recursion pieces itself. If it's more mid-range or slow, you can get away with Shadow Blazophet being your enabler. But basically, you rip Deep Rooted Evil and Howl from Beyond out of your deck as soon as possible, and then you just loop. That's it. You loop. And you're above rate for the rest of the game. And it's very hard for your opponent to beat that. I mean, think about it. You're trapping them in a state where your 3 cards is 12 to 13. Your 3 cards every turn is 12 to 13. Other decks will teeter out. Other decks will have higher ceilings. They'll also have more lows, right? But you're saying, at minimum, 3 cards 13, 3 cards 13, or 4 cards 18, right? You have just incredible play at your disposal from your Banished. And for me, it is so much fun to play that way. I love it. It's very hard for your opponent to interact with, and it's very thematically Levia. So for Dust Till Dawn, in terms of what this added to this strategy, it did 2 main things. And these were really important parts of the deck, to be fair. Very important parts of the deck. Number 1, you'd never use your weapon with this deck. The times that I played this to success, I mean, I got top 64 at the US Nats Calling with this. I was on Romping Club. And the reason for it is because you just don't use your weapon. You're not a Bloodrush deck. You're also not a Hexagore deck, because you don't need Hexagore. You have Deep Rooted Evil. Deep Rooted Evil you want to play over Hexagore because you want the 6 in your graveyard, right? You're not a Hexagore deck. That's a big misconception people have. So now with Hellhammer, though, Hellhammer is your ability to say, okay, I see what's happening. You have a good turn. I'll respect it. I know that I still need to turn off Blood Debt, though. I get it. That's core to my game plan. So I'm going to block 9 with this hand. I'm going to block 9. And then I'm going to return 6. And I'm going to get 15 value out of this turn cycle. Blocking 9, returning 6, and turning off Blood Debt. Because Hellhammer, importantly, banishes itself, right? Levia cares if a card with 6 or more has been banished. Not an attack. A card, not an attack. So Hellhammer is going to banish. And then Blood Debt's off. You won the turn cycle. And you bought yourself room to now play into your curve again with the recursion, right? How does this list do in Alexi? Honestly, no idea. I have really not played Levia at all into the Ranger meta because the 1 or 2 test games I did were so overwhelmingly miserable, and I tilt like you wouldn't believe. If I see Viserai, I literally want to flip the table. Lexi got pretty close for me, and I didn't want Lexi to become my next Viserai, so I just said, you know what? I'm just not going to play Levia. I'm just going to save my mental, and we're just not going to play Levia this set, or this last meta, more than anything, really. I was happy to not. Reinhard did me well. Reinhard did me well this last meta, so I'm glad I made the switch. But we're back to Levia, and we will have to try things like the Lexi matchup again. Absolutely, right? In my head, I think the Lexi matchup's probably pretty medium. I don't think you can ever say a Lexi matchup is favored for Levia. It's just not quite how Levia works. But you do have some decent plays into Lexi. Like if they flip and try to give you a Frostbite, Guardian of the Shadow Realm is actually really good because you pay with a blue to block with Guardian and you break the Frostbite, right? And you still blocked a 2-card 6, which is relevant because it's going to cover an arrow. So this was actually a good play back in the older like Ice Lexi days. And now it has play again because most Lexis are splashing like the tiniest bit of ice. So like that could work out. Your 2-card hands were always wildly better than Lexis were. I mean, you start with Swing Bigs, you play Endless Maws, you can Howl from Beyond on top of a Boneyard, which is another 2-card 9. So if you get those rates off consistently, like your 2-card hand is really good, much stronger than Lexi's. But the problem is Lexi's not going to play on a 2-card hand. She's going to just eat all your damage to throw her 5-card hands, her 6-card hands, her 4-card hands, and still just try to run you over. So that's where I'm not entirely sure how this deck ends up shaking out into Lexi. The one thing I think might help, though, is some of the slight additions from Dusk Till Dawn, like Diabolic Offering. I'm actually considering not running Husk in this deck. This is the one Levia deck where I think you get more out of being defensive with your Diabolics than being aggressive with your Diabolics. And because you so clearly get more from being defensive with Diabolic, since aggressively you just don't play this, you would just be pitching it into Deep Rooted anyway. Instead, what you can do with this card is try to run Tunic. Tunic either next to Ebon or Tunic just with your Art of Wars, and use that as a way to make Diabolic 3 Carrion Husks in your deck, right? That's my idea. Obviously, very untested, because I didn't run Tunic with this list before. Husk was good. But now, because Diabolic is, in theory, 3 Husks in your deck, you still need a way to banish a card on defense and make it work. And Art of War and Ebonfold are the best ways to do that. This deck does not run Expendable Limbs. I don't think that card's very good. Although it might be in the end, actually, but I feel like there's too many misses. But honestly, I could be wrong about that. There's a lot of Blood Debt in here. Huh. Maybe I'm wrong about Expendable Limbs in this kind of list, but initially I just didn't put it in, right? Anyway, I think if you can make Diabolics block 6 consistently, that is a massive win for this deck. Massive win. Because now you're looking at a way to win a turn cycle and turn off Blood Debt with Hellhammer, which is huge, huge. Now you're looking at a way to potentially fit in 3 Carrion Husks into your deck. Pretty huge. Pretty huge. You're also looking at, I think, a deck that almost always flips to Redeemed instead of Consumed. Because this is a grindy Levia deck. Grindy, grindy, grindy. And your Blood Debt is going to be massive. You definitely don't want to flip to Consumed because you'll mill yourself probably like the turn you flip, right? So instead what you're trying to do, I think, with this list is... Oh yeah, Deck Link. Absolutely. It's in the League of Levia. It is in the League of Levia. So instead with Redeemed, I think you're just using it as, once again, an extra Husk. You're just going to heal. You're going to try to fight down to like 1 or 2 life, and then just flip. And you'll use it as a 4th Carrion Husk. You've got 3, here's your 4th. Maybe if somehow you actually run Carrion Husk, that's 5, right? That is so much value for a deck that already has the best value engine in terms of, like, I guess beating fatigue or however you want to like call value, but like recursive value engine, right? In the game, in Howl and Deep Rooted, now is getting tons and tons of defensive capabilities as well. I think that's a pretty big win for this deck. I think it's real. It's just going to come down to, do you have any shot at all into Lexi? Do you have any shot at all into Viserai? I've heard a lot of people... I hate Viserai with a freaking passion like you wouldn't goddamn believe. And I've unfortunately seen a lot of people excited about that damn hero. So that makes me worried as well, because Viserai has notoriously always been just the most uninteractive, boring, brain-dead matchup in the world for Levia, because you can't force on hits, right? And Viserai is actually just better than your deck at damage. Just infinitely better, and it's not really tied to hit effects. Viserai just barfs damage. And he just does it better than you. And he does it in ways that are very awkward for a Levia deck to work with, because you want to fill Graveyard, and he's making you pitch into Arcane. So for a Levia matchup in particular, Viserai feels almost as bad as it can get. Almost as bad as it can get. It is terrible. It is miserable. Neither of you make any relevant decisions. The Viserai just keeps the hands that deal a lot of damage, and they deal more damage than you. And that's it. Like, the game just ends. Like, you just don't get pretty much any agency in the matchup. They just draw their cards and they play their cards. And you can't try to outplay any of it. It's miserable. I freaking hate that matchup. It is what it is. Anyway. The sideboard for this list also got really interesting, I think, with some inclusions from Dusk Till Dawn. Or hold up, we got questions in the chat. Is Pede just not locked into every single Levia list? I think it's locked into most, but you don't want it for this list. In this list, you don't want the non-block at all, and you don't really care about the cost curve. So I don't think it matters for a recursion list. It's just not the game plan for recursion at all. But for almost any other Levia list, I absolutely think it is. It probably is. It probably is. Okay, anyway. Do you think we are now able to play Levia in Blitz? Oh, she was always pretty good in Blitz. Levia actually was quite good in Blitz. The people who were committed and played Levia in Blitz had amazing wins. Well, okay, not like a lot of wins, because not that many people play her. But the people who played her could take home a skirmish win pretty much every season. She was fine. I had, at Worlds, when I played at the Worlds Blitz and the Battle Hardened, I think my record in Levia Blitz was 11-3 across like 2 or 3 events, whatever it was, at Worlds. Levia is quite good in Blitz. I've never had a problem with her. I think the chain matchup can be kind of miserable. Icelander was bullshit. Kano, I'm not really sure about now because you have the grasp stuff to play around with pretty well. But other than those matchups, she was always pretty good. Always pretty good. Okay, anyway. How do you feel Vincent will be... Oh, like also a Viscera matchup as in... Oh, I see. Against Levia? I don't really know. I have barely seen any like functional Vincent lists as of yet because same deal, like she's not completely coded on Talishar. So it's just been a lot of like either half functioning games or just like decks that I've been looking at. And she has like, she's going to get her crazy rate going because of the fact that like her 1-card hands with the right amount of rune chance are just crazy value. So her 1-card hands, sure, are going to be higher value than like pretty much anything Levia is doing, right? But I don't think you super care about much of what Vincent is doing because her disruption is... I don't know. I can't picture her disruption and how it lines up with Levia yet, but I feel like it's not enough to make you really care. Well, I'll have to see it on the table. I really haven't thought about the matchup enough, but her damage is only really crazy on her 1-card hands, which is, I mean, that's not that explosive to really care about. Like, you just don't mind that. If their 1-card play is good, cool. It means that they blocked with a lot of their other cards, and if they blocked, then that's taking the game longer, and you actually like playing into the long game pretty well. I just don't know what the disruption of those singular attacks is really going to do to the matchup. I haven't thought about it enough, but I don't think it's going to be that bad. I don't think so. Congrats on over 200 live. Oh, the Levia streams have been going nuts, Alex. It's incredible because before this set, if I did a Levia stream, it'd be like 40 viewers. If I did even a piddly freaking Dash stream, it was like over 100 viewers. But now everyone cares about Levia. It's incredible. I'm trying to keep it all entertaining. I can't wait to start playing the games. I think there's going to be so much for people to learn from that. But the fact that I can go live and just blather on about decks and keep people entertained is... Woo, that's fortunate. That's fortunate. I was worried that people would just tune out. Like, who cares? Who cares? But we're trying to share our knowledge here. And we're only halfway through. This is the current list that we're looking at on stream right now. Okay. So the last bit to talk about for the recursion list. In the sideboard, there's a few things that we gained that I think are pretty potent. This card, I am convinced, is potentially nuts. I know at first... You probably write this card off, trash, right? But there's a reason that it doesn't pitch, doesn't block, and it hates to be played from hand. That's because this card, if you get it in your banish zone, is on-demand disruption. From your banish zone, it is very similar to a card... I'll pull this up from Twitter. There was a card that I had designed just for fun that I had been hoping would be something we saw in Dusk Till Dawn. Let me find it. I think I posted it relatively recently. Oh, all the foot picks. The teasing. Here we go. All right, there was a card in I don't know, that had been floating around the League of Levia Discord for a while that I had theory crafted that I thought would be incredible as an add to the recursion list. I didn't think we'd get pretty much more disruption than this ever, because the idea of replaying something from your banish zone is so scary that I think they wouldn't give us something that's that strong necessarily to be played that way. So this was my theory crafted way of like ever giving us maybe slightly a bit of disruption from the banish zone that was in a way like balanced. I don't think this card is perfectly balanced, but it was an interesting thing to design. So the idea was 1 cost non-attack action with Go Again. Obviously the other card doesn't have Go Again, but you may play Withering Dread from your banish zone. Target opposing hero banishes a card from their hand. If a card is banished this way, add a card from their graveyard to their hand, Go Again, Blood Debt. So the idea was a 1 cost non-attack action for Levia would solve the cost curve of all your 2 cost attacks that banish 3 from graveyard. Now on a 2-card hand, you could do something with that floating resource. Just play a Withering Dread, then play your attack. So I wanted to rope in a little bit of disruption in that cost curve rather than just damage like Howl from Beyond is. So the idea was Withering Dread, right? Like you tell your opponent, I'm Withering Dread. I'm going to wither the dread out of you. I'm going to wither the hell out of your dread, whatever. They have to then decide, okay, I'm going to banish a card. But there's some interaction here because they need to take a look at their graveyard and kind of try to hedge, what am I going to give them back from their graveyard, right? I don't have to choose yet until I see what they banish, was the idea. Maybe that's too strong. That specifically might be too strong. But the idea was going to be, they have to make a choice on the banish, and then I will give them a card back from their graveyard, right? And so we could play around with it in a couple different ways. Like, they banish a red, but it's a bait. Because they actually... So, like, if I see them banish a red, then I'm going to give them, a blue. Because I don't want their hand to be, like, too strong or whatever. But that could have been bait. Because maybe they were missing the blue. So they banished the red in the hopes that I give them the blue because their hand was all red. Or maybe they banished the blue. And I'm thinking, okay, cool, they have no resources. I'm going to give them like a 1-cost red card or whatever. But they actually had the blue, and this was like, or they had double blue, and this was a way to play around it. Anyway, I thought it would be like a kind of mind-gamey way to interact with your opponent and not be super broken and fit the cost curve that Levia needed out of her banish zone. This was, anyway, just a cool card. It's not real. It's not real. Okay? Anyway, the card that they kind of gave us in a similar vein, though, is Dimensional Vortex. It says, you may play this from your banish zone. If you do, it costs 2 less to play. Right, so it becomes a 1 cost in any time you care about it. Each hero banishes a card from their arsenal, Blood Debt. In a way, it is a similar effect to Withering Dread in that you are disrupting them. You're banishing a card, but it's got some drawbacks now in that it doesn't have Go Again for one, and it's also going to target you. So in my head movies, right, if this ends up being a Tunic deck, then you could have a turn where you have a, like Deep-Rooted Evil, whatever, parked in Arsenal, some 6 they don't care about. It could even be a Wrecker Romp. Your opponent, Arsenal's a card. They pass into you. You say, okay, use Tunic. Dimensional Vortex. Banish both our arsenals. I turn off Blood Debt. Boom. Off no cards. You don't actually present damage, but you are banishing a card from their arsenal, and that's like probably the floor of its use case. In the ceiling, you could, play a Dread Screamer, have 1 floating, then Dimensional Vortex. You could, just go ahead and roll Scabs, because if you start with playing something out of your arsenal to kick off your turn, then if you hit Scabs on that same turn cycle, then boom, you're just like banishing a card from your opponent. Maybe it also adds mental stress to your opponent, and they stop trying to arsenal so much because they think on demand you can just clear it for 1 resource. I'm actually pretty convinced that this card might be crazy in Levia, in a Recursion Levia, because it's disruption on demand that is cyclable, right? You can keep re-banishing this with your loops. And the fact that it's not a 6 doesn't matter, because you are resetting a lot with like Unworldly Bellow, Dread Screamer when you have like the Deep-Rooted Evil and Graveyard anyway, that kind of thing. So I'm really interested to see how this plays out. Maybe it's trash, but it is a card I really did not expect. How does it get into your banish? Shadow Blasphephet. Shadow Blasphephet. That's step number 1. Or you could run Ebb and Fold. Ebb and Fold also, if you're siding in Dimensional Vortex, maybe you have to run Ebb and Fold. Because if you draw Dimensional Vortex, like, you need to get it out of your hand. So you might just have to run Ebb and Fold because of this card. But it really could be strong enough to break the deck. Like, I think this needs to be played on the table for me to like really say, but in my head, this card's crazy. Absolutely crazy. In Levia, I don't know anything about how Vincent's going to play it, but in a recursion Levia that is looping the right recursion pieces turn after turn, and who can pull recursion out of their deck, and who is a deck that lacks disruption, for you to just be able to pull out and banish their arsenal on demand from your banish zone, I really feel like that's crazy. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that. I think this card's crazy. I'm most interested to see if it works or not. Maybe it's too clunky to work. Anyway, the rest of the sideboard here is mostly just potential swap-ins, swap-outs for your recursion stuff. This list, like I said, the sideboards don't make any sense right now because you'll eventually change everything dependent on what the meta is. But for now, these were things that I was tossing around in the deck. Hungering Demagon, also just an incredible upgrade. The card's just better than Deep-Rooted Evil against any light hero, right? It blocks, it costs less than Deep-Rooted Evil, and it has an on-hit effect. Just crazy. So Recursion got tools. I mean, you cannot deny. Recursion got crazy stuff. Redeemed, maybe Vortex, definitely Hungering in the right matchup, Diabolic on defense, Hellhammer. Like, I'm very excited to play this deck. Very, very excited. It's the playset I've loved since the dawn of time with Levia. It's the playset that if you've only ever played her in Blitz, playstyle rather, if you've only ever played her in Blitz, you've never probably ever seen something like this at all, because this does not work in Blitz. It is too slow for Blitz. It definitely is. If this was still an Oldhim meta, I think the deck would actually be beyond cracked. If it was still an Oldhim meta. Now, since it's not, and we're going to have to worry about other matchups in the room, it could just be utter trash, but I think it at least is, playable in a vacuum. It is better than it's ever been. I'm really excited about it, and we'll call it there on the Recursion Redeem list. All right, we've gone through three of them. I think this one's probably the most exciting next. Recursion seems like aggro might be a tough matchup. That's always been the problem. Recursion struggled into aggro a lot, but there is a world where maybe what your sideboard is just like sinks, fates, and a club. And you just fall back on like being super grindy. And then at a certain point, you clear out all your graveyard because unworldlies don't care if they banish a 6 or not. That has worked a little bit in the past. The problem is like sinks and fates don't even help the Lexi matchup. Like their crap is 5. So I'm just worried. I am just worried. Okay. Turbo Consumed. This list, I think, is how you play Hexagore these days, because it just ramps blood debt like you wouldn't believe. And for that, that's pretty exciting, because Hexagore lists in the past always were just slow. You didn't have a singular card that could help you just hit blood debt faster. You know, you could try to fill your graveyard, then banish 3. But how'd you fill graveyard? You had to play slow, right? For once, there is now a way with Blood Dripping Frenzy to just try to turbo through high blood debt and get Hexagore cooking. I don't know if this one... Savage Lane. What's up, by the way, Nathan? Look who's hanging out. This one, in particular, I think unlocks a Hexagore deck. Whether it's going to look like this and just be turbo consumed or not, I really don't know yet. But there's definitely a world where you can play a Hexagore deck and have multiple really good hands now, you know? Shade and Scream, for one. This was pointed out during the card rating stream that, yes, it's not actually above rate over whatever Rhinar is doing, but the one use case where it is better than what Rhinar can do with this card is on a 3-card hand, you do just have a 6-attack weapon, whereas Rhinar only would be able to push a 5-attack weapon, because you'd be pushing Romping Club, which would gain the +1, right? So Shade and Scream on a 3-card hand pushing 11 for a Hexagore turn is actually like still pretty darn good. It's not the Levia rate of a 3-card 12, but you gotta remember, you're spending less cards to do it because your attack itself is just the Hexagore. And you're only needing to do this off of like a yellow, so your hands are like a little more flexible. I think that is good enough, actually. I think the 3-card 11 Shade and Scream is good enough for kind of a Hexcore style deck. You know, it turbos you through Blood Debt faster anyway, right? On top of the Blood Dripping Frenzy, helping you clear out stuff for Hexagore. On top of Shade and Swing, also, someone pointed this out. Once again, as a Hexagore play, this is a 3-card 12. If you hit Scabs, which in a Hexagore deck, I think you still run Scabs, unfortunately, because you can't give up on lines like Boneyard Marauder and a blue, potentially hitting Scabs, and swinging for 12 damage off 2 cards. So if you're a Scabskins deck anyway, then even Shade and Swing is actually okay as a 3-card 12 with Hexagore. So this deck has a lot of new cards. It's very hard to say if it's playable, but it's got a lot of new cards, so there's a lot of things you need to play around with, right? Being a Hexagore deck, you absolutely love Artivore, obviously. You've got the Slithering Shadowpedes, which have amazing synergy with Artivore, amazing synergy with Ram Raider, which is another amazing go-again source for the deck. You've got, we already went over the Shadens. You've got the Shaden Death Hydras, which makes sense if you're going to just turbo through, try to turn off Blood Debt. There are probably worlds where you can 5-card hand, keep Artivore, and go Artivore, Shaden, Hexagore on a 5-card hand. That actually sounds very much within reason. To just, 5-card hand? I have an Artivore parked in Arsenal, or like I've got a Hydra parked in Arsenal, drew an Artivore, we go. And then your turn turns off Blood Debt and comes in for 19. That's like Bloodrush levels. And you really didn't spend many cards from deck to do it. I think the damage in this deck is likely insane. It's probably pretty crazy. And it really has so much new things to play with. I'm having a hard time like wrapping my head around whether, you know, they're all synergistic or what. But I just want to jam it all into a list and just see what happens more than anything, right? Because you've got all this now Hexagore support in the main deck itself. It looks very easy to turbo through, turn on this weapon. You've got the same highs of being a Scabskins Gamblers decks as you used to. You've got better equipment now in Scowling Fleshbag. You want to be using Carrion Husk over Tunic like in the last build. And you've got now Levia, which I think it's probably going to seem pretty scary, but I think you actively want to flip to Blazenfet Levia Consumed. You don't know any line where you need 3 blues, including 2 off the top? This is Levia. You are pretty much blue heavy. I think this list is, what, on 18, but you can go up to 22. It feels pretty good. Yeah. No, I would not feel bad about those lines at all, especially since with Levia, what you tend to be pitching in are a mix of your yellows and blues, but pretty much never your reds. You almost never have opportunity to pitch in your reds. So maybe that's only a second cycle play, but it's definitely not without... It's within reason to actually pull off first cycle anyway, especially since it doesn't need to be Hexagore. Maybe you banish Slithering Shadowpede, and then you don't need the 3 blues. You just need a yellow. I think it's very possible. It's likely, maybe not, but it's within reason for the deck, and that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I think in this list in particular, the Blazenfet Levia Consumed is still likely what you're trying to flip to. Granted, you are not playing an end game for very long. You'd be flipping into Blazenfet Levia Consumed on a turn where you specifically are saying, all right, my turn, block 3, block 2, whatever it is, swing Hexagore, maybe set up Arsenal if all you do is block 2, and then on that turn, you're still winning, in theory, the turn cycle, because Hexagore, a 1-card 6, is crazy. The problem otherwise would be you didn't turn off Blood Debt. But now, when all you do is swing Hexagore on your turn, you are ticking over and flipping into Blazenfet Levia Consumed. So once again, if you can do this right on 14 life, flip right over to Consumed, only waste 1 HP, that's the right way to do it. It's going to be really cool to try to fight to that life threshold. You flip into Blazenfet Levia Consumed, and then you probably get, like, realistically 2 turns to really play the game before you deck out. I mean, this is Turbo Consumed for a reason. Turbo Consumed for a reason. So in those last 2 turns, you want to have one more, probably like really strong, just slam 'em play. Whether now it's the Art of War play because Shaden is from your Banish Zone, for one, or something along those lines, into your last turn, just Writhing Beast Hulk. Some piddly, okay, I come in for Dominate, and that's it. That's probably how you end up playing this list. Like I said, it's all in my head because this is the most different list compared to what we can draw parallels from in what existed previously. But in my head, that's how it's going to work. You are just a, like, very high value or high rate rather, Levia deck as much as you can be, into potentially some really strong Art of War enabled turns or Scabskins enabled turns. You love your small hands with Endless Maw, Deadwood, Rams, Slitherings, Shading Screams, Dreads. Howl as well on top of Dread into Hexagore is a really good 3-card play for 15. Howl on Boneyard, same deal, 2-card 9. So you've got all the good Levia rates cooked into the deck. You've got whatever craziness is enabled from like Blood Dripping Frenzy, Slithering Shadowpede, Art of War. Once again, hard to conceptualize. And then you've got just, you know, a huge push play at the very end of the game before you mill. So, not a very safe deck to play. I think, I mean, unless you are able to like pivot into a more reasonable turn where, okay, Consumed is just not going to work this game, and so you just play further on. You roll Scabs, you hit, and then you just flip into Redeemed, no problem, and got like a heal out of it. You're a Scabs deck, so like that is probably a line there. I'm interested to see what happens. I'm interested to see what happens with this kind of list. Like I said, it's so different that I just have no idea whether it's hot garbage or actually good. But it includes a lot of new cards. And it could be its own new archetype, which is really cool. Like an actual new archetype birthed out of Dusk Till Dawn here. And I really want to see Death Hydra just have nutso turns. And I feel like this deck is probably where it's most likely to happen. And this card's pretty cool. What's the lore behind Levia Redeemed or Blasmo? What happens in the story? There is that one lore article that goes over kind of like not quite what happens on the card, because in the card, you only get to pick one. You know, you either get consumed by Blasmophet and he eats your soul, and then you're this like roaming like monstrous beast that is just throwing extra legions of things at your opponent, but then, you know, eats your own deck as a cost. Or you kind of renounce Blasmophet, you lose the brute tag, you're no longer a brute, and you just no longer like, you know, play recursion pieces, Hexagore, Blasmophet, Doomsday stuff, but you also no longer have blood debt, right? So in the lore, I don't think we have a clear-cut story of like which one she ends up being as her final form. There is that one piece I'm talking about, which I'm pretty sure says she flips into both. Falling in Darkness. Basically, this story is like all about Vincent, and then Vincent like sends out Levia. She sends out Levia. Where's the first time Levia is mentioned? So, I mean, we see this little art piece before anything else, and she definitely looks redeemed in this art piece already, right? But then Vincent's like, you know, we're gonna mess up the light people. Levia, go ahead, like, you know, do your thing. Then Levia like leaves it all, leaves whatever little like huddle they were having there. Or rather, she turned to the archway that dominated the zenith of the chamber, watching as it filled with a churning darkness. That's what she did. She didn't leave the little huddle. And then she goes to Solana, I think. Where is it? Okay. Then we get this little tidbit of like the POV of a Solana kid just like being scared behind their walls. And then Levia Redeemed. This is the first time she's called Levia Redeemed, so I guess that's confirmation. She's redeemed here. Answers with a roar. She then surrenders her body to Blasmophet. So already that's actually not something that works in the gameplay. She can't go from redeemed to Levia consumed by Blasmophet. She can only pick one or the other. Which, when I first saw the card, I had to confirm with the judges, can you go from Levia Blasmophet consumed to redeemed? Because in theory, you could do that. You could flip to Blasmophet Levia consumed at 13, and then flip to redeemed after. But since it's only one card, as soon as you transform it out of your inventory, that's it. You don't get another trigger. You just can't do both, no matter what. So in the lore, it doesn't actually give us like a definitive of how she ends up, either one or the other. It sounds like she's just got this new power where she can do either. Anyway. Turbo consumed. I have no sideboard for this because, like I said, I have no freaking idea if this deck even works. It might take a lot of tinkering, and with a deck that's like pretty fragile to operate because its engine is like so dependent on all the blood debt and sixes. I'm not worried about the sideboard right now. I have no ideas on it. We'll see what happens, but I do want to play it. I mean, Hexagore is really cool. Hexagore is a freaking badass weapon. and it has dedicated support now. I think Shade and Scream specifically, well, not specifically, Shade and Scream alongside Blood Dripping Frenzy. That's a little baby Hexagore package that is just really exciting to explore. And then you can like pretend that this also works its way in there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the deck. I think, let me drop the link for everyone. This is what I'm working off of. There we go. Isn't the consumed one going to deck you out too fast? I mean, that's what I said here. The game plan I'm thinking is you just go hard aggro. As soon as you reach that like tipping point into Blazonfet Levi consumed, you purposefully take Blood Debt because your turn is just swing Hexagore, which is still a very good turn, right? Because you either block 9, swing 6, 15 damage turn cycle, or block 2, swing 6 Arsenal, different value turn cycle. But you can guaranteed control that you still have a good play, a very good rate play, and take Blood Debt on purpose to flip over to consumed. Once you do that, though, you are going to have a lot of Blood Debt, so I think legitimately you only have like 2 turns to end the game after you flip. And in those 2 turns, you try to just not block. You try to just use your 13 life as your resource there and just go as low as you can to pull off your plays. Because likely you need to end the game off of like a go again Shaden Death Hydra push. You need to be able to either Art of War and then play like Shaden out of Banish Zone into Hexagore or something, or you need to be able to, Dread Screamer and then like Shaden, whatever half of that is in Banish, right? So that's like probably your first big push, and then your last push is Writhing Beastalk. That's it. And you try to end the game, which is why I have 1 Howl from Beyond. Howl from Beyond is already good in a Hexagore list because it helps the Dread Screamer Hexagore curve and is really good with Boneyard. But if you can get it in your Banish Zone before you flip, then you can just leave it there until you're going for the close turn and just say, okay, I'm going to use Howl, I'm going to trigger Blasmo on Writhing, boom, 9 Dominate, end the game. End the game, that's it. So that's all I'm trying to do, I think. Maybe this is, someone mentioned this in chat actually, Royalty Card Gaming. This might be a Levi list where you legitimately run over 60 cards though, because when you're flipping, you need like that extra turn to not actually deck yet, right? And so maybe with the way that it lines up, you want to be at like a 66 card deck. You just need a little extra pad or whatever it is. Because there's definitely cards that aren't in the deck that you could add. It doesn't hurt to add in extra blues. Like, you could add in another set of like Convulsions or Unworldly or something. You could add in like a yellow Hungering, right? I don't think I really want to add more reds. You could add in more Shadow Blazonfets. You could just fat deck it. You absolutely could. But like I said, a lot to experiment. A lot to experiment with this deck. I just don't know. But there you go. That's Turbo Consumed. Then we've got kind of a hybrid Consume Redeem game plan. You love running a 75 card deck? Well, there you go. That's probably your list then. That's probably your list. This next one is probably starting to get not too exciting. But this is more so just value Levia with the new good cards, and then more of a flexible consume or redeem late game. Just a Levia that's playing kind of her normal game, but then is leaving her late game open to play either demi-hero to its best value. If you are in a matchup and like, you really are going to need that heal, cool. If you're in a matchup where you're going to need the extra power from consumed, cool. But this kind of list is really not built to roll or need extra action points. It's just trying to get the fattest armor value you can, which is actually a pretty big deal right now, because if you figure you need to start hedging to beat Ranger and Ninja, blocking 5 can be really important against those guys. And so you can commit a card from hand and then Scabskins, a card from hand Grasp, a card from hand Scowling, a Carrion Husk. All of those are going to block breakpoints that really matter. Yeah, the transform doesn't work right now, which is why we're not playing games, unfortunately, Pat. She's not coded on Talishar. Very sad, very sad. I can imagine. You're ready. You're like, all right, I got 14 blood and I'm at 14 life. Let's go. And then the game ends. Okay. So anyway, this is just like value Levia. This is the kind of list where I normally end up playing like even Scar for Scars or whatever the hell. Like it's just about good Levia math, and now it's got a better late game and a better headpiece and a better arm piece than ever before. And that's it. That's it. Probably not that interesting, but this is in line with what Matt was saying, where like, don't you just jam Slithering? Even in this list, yes, I think you absolutely jam Slithering. It's so good against, alongside Art of War rather. It's, usable next to Ram Raider for a 3-card 12, which is really cool. It's, of course, good with Bloodrush as well. It's an extra 3-card 18, which is really cool on that play. So, yeah, I mean, this card is just fantastic. So that's a big upgrade for the deck, for one. Ram Raider, I don't know how many counts I want to end up on this because its only real synergy piece is Shadowpeed. So that would be where that lines up. Same deal with like Red Unworldlies and Writhings. I'm not entirely sold on kind of going for the late game close with either Reckless Swing or Writhings, but as of now, Writhings are a toolbox way to end the game if you go Consumed. You can just block with them, don't worry about it. They'll end up in Banished, you can flip to Consumed, and then just have Dominates on demand, which could be really cool. Like, imagine you get your opponent down to the scenario, they're at like 4 life, right? They're at 4 life. You have 2 Writhings banished. You know that they're not running D-Rex, they're out of equipment. And you just say, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to flip to Consumed, and then my turns are just going to be Writhing. They take 3. They go to 1. Next turn, Writhing. They die. And that's it. Like, it's almost a new threshold you can fight for, because if you can get the Writhings parked in your banish zone and then control the flip and also not mill yourself, which is why this deck isn't like crazy heavy on Blood. I mean, it's pretty heavy, but it's not crazy heavy. Then you can just know that you win the game. You can just have the Writhings parked right there, and then boom, that's Dominate. That's all you need. So I'm not sure how many you end up running, though, for that kind of game plan. Could be 3. Right now I'm on 2 Red Unworldly, 2 Red Writhing, kind of a baby combo there. You could also, yeah, like Pat's saying, Reckless Swing, to kind of force them into that Reckless Swing range is also really probably the right combo to play with it. It's in the next deck we'll be showing you. So Reckless Swing probably still makes it. I'm going to be trying first some of the new blue base cards because I don't think they work really well alongside Reckless Swing. The new Diabolic Offering, right, like that with Reckless Swing is not great. Like, it doesn't inherently count as a 6. It's another like kind of weird non-blocky type card that you're drawing next to each other. So I would rather, like Deadwood even in that kind of hand, because at least Reckless could discard the Deadwood. It's not the worst because you could at least block with Diabolic for 0 if it's actually going to end the game, and then Reckless Swing on top. But right now I'm trying the other combo, which is with Expendable Limbs. So with Expendable Limbs, I really don't think you can also jam Reckless in the list. Reckless is probably better than Expendable Limbs, for sure, honestly. But I do want to see what Expendable does for the deck, if anything ever. I'm very worried about this card. I don't think it's going to work almost ever. But it has highs to it that can't be ignored. There are real ways where, you're just getting to block 4 on a blue for no sweat. And you just get to like play your turn out like you wanted to anyway. Just boom, like you won the RNG battle. But because it is random and you're going to be using it in a deck where, it doesn't hit everything and is live, right? Like if it hits, like if you've got these hands with Art of War's Blood Rushes, some of these non-6 blues, what do you do with this card? You're already looking at a lot of cards that probably want to be your pitch card for the turn, which is why I don't think you can run too many of these. That's why we're on like a 2 blue Diabolic Offering, 1 blue Expendable Limb split. They worry me. They worry me in conjunction, but I want to try it because there's the mini combo of like block with Diabolic, then Expendable. Expendable banishes a 6, Diabolic goes up to 10. And in a perfect world, the card you banished with Expendable is then playable still, so like you really kind of nuke the turn cycle. That could be cool. So we're trying it. This is the list that's trying it. Not sold, though. Not sold. Anyway, I don't think this one's too interesting. It doesn't use too many of the new cards. Like, this is just a new block 3 blue with like minor synergies when you go wide, right? Like on an Art of War turn, on a Dread Screamer turn, on a Blood Rush turn, maybe Blood Dripping Frenzy adds to that, but worst case, it's just a blue block 3 anyway. I mean, that's fine. That's totally fine. We're running the full Council Slithering, so it could have some synergy there. The Shade and Death Hydra, same deal. If you're swapping into Consumed more than likely with this list, I think 1 or 2 Shaden should probably always be there just in case. That ends up being like your late game play, right? Where you can just have this parked. It's a great resource sink, and you can just have a wide turn. There is a world, this is crazy, but bear with me. You flip into Consumed. You then, with a Shaden parked, right? You got like Blood Rush parked in Arsenal, whatever. Your opponent swings into you, you don't die. You say no blocks. You go Blood Rush Bellow into Claw, Shaden Hydra. It's totally possible. It's totally possible. I mean, your deck's going to be tons of blues because you're banishing so many cards. You'll be back to whatever you pitch. So you'll be very blue concentrated. So I think one of the tricks of playing the late game right when you're on high blood debt with Consumed is to have something really strong set up in Arsenal already to kind of push the Consume trigger to new highs, right? Because it's cool. If you're on like a lower blood debt strat, you flip to Consumed just to get smaller value plays of like, oh yeah, I'm going to play out an Endless Maw from my Arsenal. Or not my Arsenal, my Banished Sun. I'm going to play out a Dread Screamer and just use it as like a little bit of a bank of intellect. That's cool and all, but that doesn't win you the game. I think what wins you the game is you set up like a crazy push that is just only possible off of like, in theory, a 6-card hand, which Levia would never have otherwise. And you just go for it. It just goes crazy. I want to see if that works. So this is like a kind of normal mid-rangey Bloodrush list that's more so built around that potential ceiling with the new mini combos added in of Slitherings, the Ram Raider, back to full counts of Art of War, even a Red Deadwood. I think this card's going to be quite good now. Whatever this combo does for the deck. We'll just try it. Experimental, not too exciting, but yeah, it's not a crazy Consumed list like the last one we saw. Do you not have TTS? Could you try playing some Veer games? No, my TTS, for whatever reason, is very finicky. It crashes more often than it doesn't, and I don't enjoy TTS at all. Like it's like I disassociate so hella hard from Flesh and Blood when I play on TTS. It's not worth it. I don't think I could stream TTS even if I wanted to. If you want to go back, I did a TTS tournament against the Malaysia team. I think Invictus Games was their name, I think. They challenged me to a best of 3. I played Levia against their 3 top players in Malaysia on TTS. And I don't know. I won. I did win the best of 3. But it's just, yeah, it's the only TTS content I've really done. I didn't enjoy it. And I don't want to do it again. But it's there. It's there if you want to see me painstakingly use TTS and just click all the wrong buttons. Anyway. Last deck. This one to me is probably the most competitively viable next to just the full-on Bloodrush Aggro, which that's the deck we started off with. So let me pull up Bloodrush Aggro one more time so we can take a look. Bloodrush Aggro was kind of the no-block scenario where all you're doing with Levia is presenting 12 a turn minimum. That's it. 12 a turn minimum. Off 4. If you can do it off 3, amazing. But at minimum, off 4. This is the deck that I truly think probably has the most legs going into the Dusk Till Dawn meta, because it's not too high on blood debt, so the blood debt that you do end up accruing into the redeem flip, or the consume flip, is going to be more so along the lines of like, okay, cool, I have an extra Dread Screamer. I have like an, extra Boneyard, whatever you need for like the cost curve to smooth out, but it's nothing like crazy in terms of getting value off here. It's more so a deck that's abusing Slithering Shadowpeed more than anything. Anyway, if this deck isn't kind of the better Levia build, then I think it'll end up being this deck, which is, once again, a Bloodrush Claws list. It's sad, but I do think the best lists are probably going to just still be Claws. You can't deny the fact that out of nowhere, literally like on turn 2, you could just deal 20 damage. And if you just go second, and you're like, okay, cool, 4-card Bloodrush hand, Claw, swing big, and just deal 20 on turn 2. Like, you cannot... Taking that out of your deck loses you so much potential aggression, so much ceiling for the deck, so much like natural go-wide nature that Levia likes anyway with her cards like Dread Screamer, that I don't think the most competitive Levia build can cut Bloodrush Claws. The most competitive. You can, but I don't think the most competitive will. Anyway, in the same vein as the last list, this is really using Levia's new equipment to just be as tanky on board as possible. With the Grasp, Scabs, Scowling. And then the list itself is just the smallest value Levia hands. It's really about scaling and blocking. This version of Levia is probably the kind that's been played for the longest, where it's just basically a Bloodrush deck that plays small hands at a good rate, and that's it. It doesn't do anything fancy. I'm not really trying for cute plays. It is just built for consistency. In this list, I'm running Scar for Scars. Now, it's not a meme. It's actually not a meme. But Levia has a little bit of a slow early game, right? Like on the first turn, it is very possible for you to just block, and that's it. If that's all you're doing, then, you've probably leaked a damage or two, right? As soon as you want to be stepping on the gas, that's it. You flip, especially with this kind of list, because you do have a lot of blood debt. You want to stay the aggressor once you've traded in your early game for like even just a turn. And Scar for Scar is actually pretty good in that way, because it lets you start with 4 damage value per card, which is what Levia can scale with on all of her other cards as well. So it's within that vein. You can close the chain, send it to your graveyard, which gets you graveyard fill on demand, which is also really strong for Levia. That can actually be a big problem because you don't run any 0 cost, like just burnable graveyard fill in Levia. I mean, sometimes you could run like a blue barraging beatdown, and that could be a way you do it. But now Scar for Scar actually is that role player. I started to really like this card in Levia in the ProQuest season. A bunch of people were playing it in ProQuest season. It's what I got top 4 at the ProQuest with Levia. And I think that was the highest finish out of all Levias in the last meta. So there you go. It was a Scar for Scar list. So we're still trying it. We're still trying it. I'm not completely off of it yet, because it is just a good rate card. And with the way that Levia plays in early game, it's very fine. And if you can dump it next to your other really good rate cards, you start to feel pretty impressive. Because now you could look at a hand that's realistically, okay, drop Scar. Okay, 2 card, pitch blue Deadwood. 3 card, 12. That's normal Levia stuff. Normal Levia stuff. And it was at very low cost to deck building. You didn't jam in Artivore. You didn't, which is potentially clunky in its own right. You didn't need a graveyard yet to start pushing Go Again with a Dread Screamer. You can do that with Scar for Scar into Swing Big, Scar for Scar into Deadwood, Scar for Scar into Endless as 3 card plays. You can do Scar for Scar into literally any other play you make as just an extra 4 value that you drop. I'm not completely off of it, and I have the promos, so I do want to play them in at least one list. Otherwise, it was a complete waste of money. It was a complete waste of money. Anyway, the rest of this Levia deck is literally just scaled for that same 3 card 12 rate. That's it. That's all the deck's trying to do. It is not trying to have clunky hands at all. So it's not running Artivores. No Artivores in this list baseline. I think if you need them, you can add them in from your sideboard, like into Prism, right? Extra Artivore, extra Go Again is cool. But otherwise, it is just a Levia deck that trades. You trade, you get good value. You trade, you get good value. You Bloodrush, you trade. You trade, get good value. You Bloodrush, you win. Like, that's it. That's it. That's all you do. Why no Peds? It's not an Artivore list. It's not an Artivore list. And Shadowpede, it wouldn't fit in this list anyway. Graveling Growl is just objectively better for this list because you want the block. You just want to trade. That's it. So these are the builds of Levia I'm looking to play. We've got 6 different versions in total, which is quite a lot. I mean, if you told me that Levia would have 6 potential builds before Dusk Till Dawn, you would have had to been on some heavy copium or dipping into Blitz and Commoner, But now I think there's legitimately 6 different ways to start to explore a list that all have at least a conceptualized game plan. Whether they're functional has yet to be discovered, but I think the only one I haven't really put time into exploring, the only unique archetype I haven't really explored yet, would be the full Fatigue Redeem list. Some people in the Discord were talking about potentially playing nothing but D-Reacts, going really slow, dragging your opponent down, and just using Redeemed as life gain, and then never worrying about blood debt to close out the game with Romping Club, Just, that's it. That's the game plan. Very grindy, very boring. To be fair, though, I do enjoy that kind of deck, so I wouldn't call it boring. A lot of other people would. I didn't try building that list because it could be completely non-functional. You still need 13 blood debt to flip into Redeemed. You don't just get to flip to Redeemed for a heal. You have to have 13 blood debt. And so to play a really grindy list, and yet at a certain point need to play in a blood debt to get to 13 sounds deeply dysfunctional to me. Deeply dysfunctional, because the more of the defensive tools you add, the less blood debt cards are in your list. And you still will need an ample amount of banishers to start clearing your graveyard, and banishers to block with that have blood debt to be cards that you banish from your graveyard. So it really feels like if there is a build of that works, it is going to come down to some just weirdo luck banishes where you're oh man, I only have this much blood debt and I need to hit 13 on the X amount of banishers I have in my deck, or I just will never flip this game. And if it happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, I just don't see it working. So I didn't go ahead and build that because I don't think I don't think that one is worth like trying to crack yet. I'll let someone else do that. But anyway, that's the 6 builds that I've been looking at for Levia so far. Really eager to play all of them except the Berserk list. I just don't give a crap about Berserk, but it is really cool that you're down to just 9 misses in a Berserk list. That's crazy. Like, it's hard to ignore that. You only have... Actually, in theory, if you're playing Berserk Bloodrush as your combo, and let's say you're pitching a non-6 blue to get things started, then you only have 7 misses in your deck, because that's already 3 misses committed to the play out of 10. So in an ideal world, the first Berserk push in your deck, you only have 7 misses in deck for. Actually pretty cool. We'll see if this ends up working, though. Anyway, least favorite, we'll rank them. Least favorite, I mean, this one I do want to play, but I don't find it super exciting. My absolute favorite, I love this playstyle like you wouldn't believe. Will it work in this meta, though? No freaking idea. Worth exploring, but could just be straight worse than like this kind of list. Could just be straight worse than this kind of list. This one's kind of like in the middle between like what these two are doing. Turbo Consumed could be an absolute meme. Could be kind of crazy. Could just be the fastest aggro games you've ever seen. Ramp Hexagore by like turn 2, boom. Dump ton of blood debt, transform, Shadow Hydra them, end the game. Like, who knows? Maybe that's how it plays. And then, yeah, is that all of them? Yeah, that's all 6. Anyway, that's what I've been exploring. Any questions? I'll timestamp all this so people can go back and look over these like day 0 builds. But 18 Bloodrush off of 3-4, I mean, you already have that. In the Boneyard list. Or in the Boneyard in the list. I think you just came in late, Nathan. There's a lot of builds that are going for the Shadow P to fit that curve. But not this build. This build doesn't want the non-block most of the time. Which is why there's different builds for Levia, believe it or not. Not everything needs to go in one list. You can try a bunch of different things. Can I link the recursive list again? Yes. Patient consume list. I'll dump all these in the Discord as well. Am I happy that she can finally banish from hand? Not really. Those cards are pretty trash. I don't think she needed those for an early game. If you really wanted to add an early game, I would still just add like Swing Bigs and Deadwood Rumblers, you know? If you want an early game, you might as well get the best rate early game you can get. And Scar for Scars, Deadwood Rumblers, Swing Bigs, which I think are always in the list anyway, and then even like bringing in CNCs, whatever's relevant for the matchup, all of that is a better early game than the hand banishers. Those ones are trash. I do not like them. Ram Raider could work because you're going to run 3 Centipede in some list. And a Ram Raider next to a Centipede is a 3-card 12, which is good. Thanks for everything, Ethan. You're going to head out. The stream was awesome. We're super pumped to meet you at Canadian Nats. Thank you so much, Daniel, for tuning in. I will see you there. Can I link the rock list? Did Rock get any viable cards this set? Is this actually decent for a Rock deck? Kind of. I mean, you don't get to choose. This is all just random. But, I mean, maybe for a Rock deck, this is, like, okay. You know, it's a blue that you're going to add. It's a 1 cost, which is cool. So you can just dig up Dinner and then Tunic Rock. Like, okay. So dig up Dinner. Actual Rock upgrade. Yeah. There you go. Rock got 1 card. Rock got the 1 card. I guess no, that's not true. It also got this one. Can't disregard this for any brute deck going forward. So 2 cards for Rock. 2. And maybe in a Rock deck, you actually would run this because you're not on Bloodrush anyway. So there's no downside to this being just like a filler 6, you know, applicable in some matchups. So there you go. 3 Rock cards. 3. Rock did it. Upgrades across the board. Do you keep track of milling myself out and blood debt? Yeah, I mean, that's That's the two. You'll have to keep a different tally. Does Blasphemous kill me or does Levia kill me? Those are the two tallies. Because I just don't think Levia can kill me anymore. Unless something goes terribly wrong, I purposefully skip out on the Blasphemous consume trigger, thinking it'll be a redeemed game, but then I like punt a redeemed turn and then die to blood debt. That will be so insanely rare, but it could happen. So you'll have to have two tallies. You'll have to have two. Yeah, so that's it. I think I'm going to call it there. Shorter stream, but, you know, there's nothing to actually play on Talishar yet. So this was at least a recap of all the decks that I'm going to be toying around with for Levia. And there's a real room for just something else to be viable as well. These are different enough that probably they cover the concept of a deck that will end up being kind of the best Levia deck. But it could just be back. I mean, it literally could be back to just pummel Levia with no blood debt. And it's boring, but that deck technically got the Demi-Hero as well. That deck got the Demi-Hero, it got one more 2-cost 6 with blood debt in like Wall Breaker, if you care about that. Let me pull up, actually, we can just look at that list live and try to see what would have changed from it. Live here. I think his deck is linked. Yeah, so if we look at like the Pummel Levia list, right? In terms of what this kind of deck would have gained, I mean, it gained Scowling Fleshbag. Oh, look, it's a live link. Oh, yeah, look, Alan's got it updated. Okay, well, then we have no questions. We'll just see what he did. So he added Scowling Fleshbag, obviously makes sense. Added Void Wraith. I don't think he was running Mark of the Beasts before. And then is sideboarding in Expendable Limbs. And of course, Redeemed. Yeah, see, this is what I mean. Like, I don't think this list gets too exciting from Dusk Till Dawn, because it just doesn't really play into the support Levia got. But it is to note that this list is the most disruptive way to play Levia. I mean, pummels are disruption, and they do fit Levia's cost curve. So if you jam them into a deck, then you know they've got to do something, right? And it's still a deck with decent damage because of it being a Bloodrush Claws core. With the now added upside of, if you can control it, get to 14, because you likely really don't have too much blood debt with this list. It's like, you know, 2-3 blood debt, right? Get to 14, control the flip. You're guaranteed to pretty much have only blood debt cards you care about anyway, like Dread Screamers, Endless Maws. These ones from Banish are then like pummel enablers, so that's kind of cool. But that's about it. So I guess that's all it'd be doing, is you flip, you get extra pummel targets from your Banish zone, which is pretty cool. Maybe that's good enough. You know, that really honestly could just be good enough. You now get to pummel off of smaller hands. And you don't mill yourself. I won't write that off, honestly. I would not write that strategy off. It's doable, I think. I think that's actually doable. It's going to come down to, what does the flip turn look like? Can you consistently get the flip off? Because you're not going to have too much blood debt. You'll have Carrion Husk to, like, at minimum always have the 1 to go from 14 to 13, but then you wouldn't have any cards banished. So yeah, you need to have gotten these in, even though you don't have too many banishes to actually get them in. So you need to get a little lucky on that. Hope that these banish themselves, basically. Because you have no other way. There's no Art of War to get things guaranteed. Maybe that's why he's running Mark of the Beast. Mark of the Beast could be the guaranteed way to at least have a pummel target parked in Banish Zone for pummel. That makes sense, actually. That's quite smart. I like this a lot. Guaranteed have Mark of the Beast ready for your pummels. All right, I'm sold. This is probably very fine. This is probably a very fine way to play Levia. We'll link Alan's list again. I honestly had not thought about the Mark of the Beast for a list like this. That is very smart. Mark of the Beast guaranteed to be a pummel target from Banish, so after you flip, you get a 3-card hand for 10 disruption. I mean, it's better than keeping a 4-card hand for it. It's worse than having the Tunic curve for it. to be fair. But it is a unique playline that Levia never had before. It's worth exploring. Worth exploring. I'll make my own edits to this idea, but I like this. Go make a personal copy. Pummel. Okay, that is going to be it. That is going to be it on the stream. Like I said, we can't actually play any games today. I'm hoping that she's live on Talishar tomorrow. I'll have to... I hate to bug Nate because he's working very hard and it's the work week after all. But yeah, Talishar unfortunately does not have new Levia ready. Pretty evident if you... Oh, people are still playing Levia. People are still trying. This is some version of a Pummel Levia. Okay, I mean, this is like the least relevant way to play her with the new Demi hero anyway. So, yeah, technically we could be doing this, but nah, I'd rather call it, do some stuff off stream. All right, that's going to be it for everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'll add the timestamps. I will hopefully see you tomorrow. If Talishar is not ready with Levia tomorrow, I think it's still probably worth going live and maybe just experimenting with like Vincent or something while we wait, because she seems to be like mostly ready. So there we go. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It was tons of fun, and I'll see you tomorrow. Woo! Step, step, arms, spin. What? Woo! And slide and tango. 1, 2, 1, 2.